Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 161 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. We're here to chase away the Blue Mondays. This is going to be an absolutely gigantic show. So much stuff has happened since we did the last episode. It's almost overwhelming. The rundown feels a little overwhelming. We're gonna chop through this stuff. So I know sometimes maybe we discuss things a little more in depth than some other podcasts might, but not tonight. We've got to get through a ton of stuff. So we're gonna keep it short, quick, and to the point. Those of you guys watching on YouTube, please subscribe via Twitch Prime. Instructions are down below. Give us a free $2.50 every month. All you got to do is just click one button. We'd really appreciate it if you could do that. But like I said, we don't have any time to screw around on this episode. We got to get right to it, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to kick things off with The Division 2. We talked about it last week. I had played a good bit of it. I have now played a metric ton of it. And the first thing I would say is that I have enjoyed the game less the longer I've played it. It's not a bad game. I still enjoy spending time playing, but I've really started to uncover a lot of issues and wrinkles the more time that I've spent with it. And we don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but as usual, we do 1 week where we kind of give our first impressions. Second week, we follow it up with our final impressions, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So as far as issues that I've uncovered as I've played more of The Division 2, a lot of it has to do with level balancing in conjunction with the cooperative play. So I'll preface everything by saying that if you have friends to play with on your friends list who are always going to be there to play with you when you want to play, this doesn't relate to you. If that's the case, you're going to love this game. Playing it with friends, everything's fine. If you're even just playing with randoms, everything is fine. The problem is it's very hard to get randoms to join a game with you. So you can, and if you've played it at all, you know how annoying it is because you just constantly get calls for help from other players. And like you, I ignore them. Because the other problem with it is there's not enough information given when you go to join or someone goes to join you. They have no idea what mission you want to play. They have no idea what you're doing. If somebody asks for help and you check, it doesn't tell you what they're doing. So you have no idea whether you'd want to join their game and help them or not.
That's very weird.
No, it's awful. I think it's what keeps the cooperative play from working. So I have tried to play this game by myself just to see what it's like to try to play it as a single player. And basically what I found is you can play missions that are a level or two higher than you. They're going to be really hard. And you're going to have to fight through every room and kind of perfect every room and use all your skills and all your perks to get through each room, but you can do it. The problem is you get to the end of that mission where you fight that final boss room, or maybe it is actually a boss, and you could fight that room like 20 times trying to beat it. Because literally, if the level of the mission is a level or two higher than you, all it takes is one burst of enemy gunfire to kill you. So you basically just have to be perfect, and you have to be very quick with your healing. And but by the time you get to the end of that mission, beating that boss at the end, that boss level, is almost impossible. I mean, you need luck, and you need to play perfectly to do it. So if you're trying to play by yourself, and you're trying to go a level or two up, because the alternative is grinding. And the more I've played this game, the more I've realized there are literally like 3 side mission types. And after you've played it for 15 or 20 hours, you're sick of doing those same mission types. You're tired of taking control points. You're tired of silencing the PA system that's sending out propaganda, and you don't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to do it anymore. So I was like, well, you know what? I'm a level or two below this campaign mission. I'm going to trudge forward and play it. And it's just this exercise that literally each mission, if you play it by yourself, and again, if it's a level or two above you, it could take like 2 hours to get to the end. And then maybe 50-50, you'll be able to finish it by yourself. You get so little experience for completing those smaller missions that you have to just do tons and tons of stuff to go up one mission. The flip side of that is if you complete one campaign mission, in general, every time you do that, you go up a level. So it's this balancing act that you play with yourself. You're like, okay, do I want to go play this mission by myself and try to get people in? But what happens if I get to the end and I can't finish it and I have to go do something because I have a life? I got caught in that trap like 4 or 5 times, and it basically disgusted me to the point that I didn't want to play it anymore. Now, again, I want to remind you that I said if you have people to play with for this game, people that you know are going to be there when you're ready to play, it is great. But playing this game by yourself or trying to rely on randoms to get in a game with you has proven to be a complete debacle. Now, that's something that seems like it should be easy to fix. You'd think.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not something that completely flips the script on the game's design or should break other systems in the game. They just aren't giving you enough information to make informed decisions as far as whether you want to join in with another person cooperatively. Literally, if they just provided that information, it would make things so much easier and so much more enjoyable. With all that said, I've probably played the game for 40 hours now. So even if I'm at the point where I really don't have any interest in playing it anymore, that's okay. Like, if I had spent $60 on this game, I've already got my money's worth out of it, hands down. I had seen some people when I started playing it telling me that they got to level 30 in like 2 days. That's a lie. That is a straight up lie. There is no way. No way. I don't care how you maximize XP. That is not happening. This game is a grind, and it takes a long, long time, even to get to level 20. I mean, I'm like level 22 or something, and I've been playing it for like 40 hours. And I didn't do it from the beginning. Like, I didn't follow some strategy guide that says this is how to maximize your XP. You figure it out very easily. There are perks that you can choose that multiplies the XP that you get for each kill. If you, like, so say you kill like 5 guys with 1 grenade, you can get bonus for killing all 5 guys with the 1 grenade. There's like 5 or 6 different levels of that, and I maxed all that stuff out first because I knew, obviously, that that is the best way to build XP and to level up quickly, and it still takes a long, long time. And I think maybe part of what happened with me at the end of the game was I started to become impatient, and I got tired of the grind, and I was like, you know what, I just want to try to get through these campaign missions if I can. And I couldn't. And I had nobody to play with online. Love all you guys, but none of y'all seem to want to jump in and play with me. I don't know why. I send out calls for help, and nobody ever comes. And so I could not find people to play with that were on my friends list that would want to play. I always had to rely on randoms to jump in with me. So I would say the game's not balanced terribly if you're just taking it the way the game kind of forces you to take it, which is, okay, you are the exact level of this campaign mission, play it. Then it's perfectly balanced. But if you're even 1 level below what they're recommending, it's going to be a struggle. And if you're 2 levels below, it's tough. You have to play at the top of your game to get through it. So those of you who like to play games by yourself and don't like to grind, this is definitely not a good choice for you. So the game's not selling well, Matt. I don't know if you saw or not, but it sold like 20% of the first division in its first week.
Apparently I'm not alone.
Yeah, I mean, you're not. It looks like a lot of people were like, I got what I needed out of it. But at the same time, to be fair, this game is significantly better than the first game in a number of ways. They've done a good job of updating something while not turning it into something else entirely. But it does make me wonder what the future of games as a service is, because I'm kind of starting to get to that burnout point now. I've never been like a player who liked to grind levels anyway. Even back in old JRPG days on the SNES, I quit a lot of those when I got to that point where, oh, here's this boss that's 10 levels ahead of you. Mm-hmm. Now go out into the world and hack up these same 5 enemies for the next 10 hours so you can fight him. Like, I never got into that stuff. And I mean, would you say that that's intrinsic to games as a service? Do you find that to be typical?
I mean, yeah, a little bit. Do I think it has to be that way? Probably not, but it's certainly the paradigm that the major publishers that are making them seem to have chosen. I don't know if that's because that's like a metric that they've found maximizes something, or if it's like...
Or it just extends the game.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It extends the game, it extends the time you'll be there, and probably the time you might spend on some microtransactions. Or if that's just like, no one's been creative enough to break out of that mold. Yeah, that sounds familiar. That's one of the reasons I didn't want to play it, because like it all sounds familiar. Everything sounds familiar.
There's certainly nothing groundbreaking. I mean, unless you want to talk about like the Dark Zone.
Here's a video where
the tweaks to the Dark Zone.
A guy got to level 30 in 14 hours.
14 hours?
Yep.
I don't know how that's possible.
I'm sure there's tons of like, if you just do like level 30 fast, like you find all these like guides on how to like maximize things, and don't do side missions till you're level 16 because they scale, but also would donate like your junk.
So they've dug into the data.
Yeah,
and figured out.
They're min-maxing basically.
Right.
They're maximizing the XP scaling to give them the maximum amount.
Is that enjoyable playing a game that way?
Tons of people do it.
I know, but is it enjoyable?
Some people love it. I mean, it's not something I would really do. But,
yeah. It kind of, to me, it just kind of defeats the purpose of playing a game. It's like you're letting someone else tell you exactly how to play it. That seems weird to me.
I mean, there was a whole strategy guide industry based on that for years, until the internet made it redundant to pay for that.
But I mean, I'll say that like that type of stuff wasn't really in strategy guides. It was usually just like, this is where you go, this is how you solve the puzzle, this is how you beat this boss.
Well, for if you're dealing with people that like consider the end game to be when the game starts.
No, that's a good point.
Grinding through the early levels is just like busy work you have to do to get to the real thing. So. But
the campaign missions in this are way better than the other content. I mean, it's night and day. And I actually really enjoyed the campaign missions in this, even though they're really long and they're really tough, particularly, like I said, if you're trying to go in a little earlier than maybe you should. But they were interesting. They actually had some semblance of the plot incorporated into them. Not that the plot in this game is worth anything. It's terrible. But at least it seemed to tie it in a little better. One thing that I hated about Anthem was when you would have mission stuff happening while you're playing, because everybody had a suit on, like I had no idea who anybody was. It was like, wait a minute, and you go back to like the base, and someone will be like, "Hey, we did a great job out there." I'm like, "Who the hell are you?" Like, because you never see their face; they're always behind a mask. And at least in this game, you can kind of connect the dots between what's actually happening out in the field and then the story segments that happen once you go back to the base of operations. And I liked the game world does feel alive. I mean, there's patrols for both the bad guys and the good guys going on at all times. You can get caught up in these battles that just unexpectedly emerge between like your side and their side out in the streets. And honestly, some of the best loot that you get are when sometimes they'll encounter like a heavy or whatever, and you come upon that fight and you help him finish off that heavy and he'll drop like a rare or whatever. That ended up being some of the best gear that I got in the game. So, yeah, I guess I would say if you weren't sick of the Division after the Division 1, you'll probably like this game. I think if you're like Matt, like I would not recommend that Matt pick this up and play it. I just wouldn't. Like, based upon what you told me and how much I know that you played the first game, I would not recommend it for somebody.
I got no interest. I mean, maybe like one day when everything's out for it.
Next month,
and it's like,
when there's nothing to play.
It's like $15.
Yeah.
Like I would consider it.
Yeah.
If I was bored and had nothing else to play. But like, I can't think of anything I'd want to play less right now. Especially after Anthem. I mean, I feel like I already kind of went through that ringer with Anthem.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Division 2 is a better game, but it's too late.
Yeah.
Especially considering I already played Division 1 to death, and I don't have anyone to play with regularly because that group that I used to play online with all the time kind of disintegrated due to life. People move on.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have people to play this with. Like, I had no one to play with on my friends list, so I had to try to play with randoms, and it's not.
It's also where this is the first time I've seen like other people I know in the industry on Twitter and stuff saying like, "Hey, if anybody wants to play Division 2," like even Sessler.
They couldn't find people to play
even
with.
Sessler was like, "Hey, I'm looking for people to play Division 2 with if anyone's got it on Xbox or whatever." And like, I've never seen even him. He's always got someone to. But like,
it's the same case for me. I have tons of journalists
feels like
on
people
my
just
friends
sort of
list.
like, yeah, here it is, we're done, whatever. Like, there's nothing about it that like caught my attention. I mean, it's sort of the days gone of games as a service. It's just like, yep, that's a thing.
Yeah, it's like you can also go into the menus and try to match up with other people. So someone else who is hosting the game. But you cannot choose what mission. So say I need to complete a campaign mission. I would like to be able to go into the interface and say, okay, I'm looking for someone to play with for this mission. All you can do is just go select and it randomly chooses missions. You have no idea what mission you're signing up for until you get sucked in and booted up, and there you are with your partners, and this is the mission you're playing. And for me, every single time, it was a mission that I had already completed on my own. So there's a lot of hassle playing this game, and nothing really works, at least I think, the way it should work. Or maybe it's the way they think it should work. I disagree if that's the case. There would be a lot of easy ways to tweak this game, in my opinion, that would make it far, far better. And that's kind of my hope. Ubisoft doesn't typically abandon its games when they're not in a perfect state. They usually stick with it, particularly their games as a service. So I have faith that Ubisoft will be on it. I just wonder if the issues that I'm having are the ones that they even view as issues or not. But they were kind of deal breakers for me. Again, not having somebody that I could play with on a consistent basis online. You've forsaken me, Maddie. I needed you.
Nah, not for this one.
Yeah, so what you see is what you get with the Division 2. There are lots of tweaks to the formula that the first game kind of laid down as a template, but it's not markedly different than that first experience. And to spend another $60 on it, I have a problem recommending that. So there you go.
$60 plus whatever they're going to charge for the expansion stuff later.
Yeah.
Season pass or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a $100 gold version
Probably.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I say take a pass, unless you didn't play the first game. And if that's the case, you're definitely getting the best experience of the two if you jump in here.
Or you could just get the first one for cheap.
Yeah, for like $10 probably. Yeah, at this point. And then you have all that other content to play through as well. So that might be the best call. All right, we're going to talk next about what I believe is the biggest story of the week. And this is something we discussed briefly, and we did not do a good job of guessing what this was going to be. And that is Google's game streaming initiative called Stadia. And we did some prophesizing in the last episode of what we thought might happen. We were pretty much wrong across the board. What were your first impressions, Matt, after it ended? And now that we've had, and then we'll address, okay, now that more information has come out, what we think. But what was your first impression when you just saw the presentation at GDC?
My first impression was that they're trying to sell me. I felt like I was in Alaska and they're trying to sell me a refrigerator.
An ice cream cone in Alaska.
Pretty much. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be successful or not, but like I feel like the whole streaming is the future thing is total bullshit.
Okay.
It is a thing that does not do the consumer any favors and doesn't really help you except in very specific use cases. And for the most part, it is a corporate-driven methodology that they're trying to convince us is cool tech, because what they want is to be able to control the content and the experience and everything on their end more than what we've already had. And to me, removing the in-home hardware, removing that kind of stuff, it does me no favors and does nobody any favors. And I have negative interest in it. The tech is impressive. Google, a company as big and resource heavy as Google, throwing its weight behind an idea like this is actually pretty cool to see, in terms of just sort of like, wow, like it's going to shake stuff up, or it's going to like, it's going to make the big three sort of at least probably like prick their ears up a little bit, which is, not a lot does that anymore, especially since like, Microsoft and Nintendo are real comfortable with each other and Sony just sort of does its own thing. Like there's not an interaction between, the three companies that sort of run the industry right now. And kind of Google throwing a monkey wrench into that, it could end up with some interesting stuff and in play. But as someone who, as a customer, a potential customer, like this is a solution in search of a problem to me. Like there's no, like game streaming is just like you're introducing more lag, you're introducing a lack of ownership over the content, you're introducing the ability to take away, if, in a Netflix style sort of like, oh, that game I like, it's not here anymore. Like it's not there this month. It'll be back in a couple months, but you can't play it right now because it's not here. And it's just like,
it doesn't sound like that's a part of their plan, but you're right. It opens up the opportunity.
It's like, you know what? Look, people can talk about and compare this to Steam as much as they want, but you know what? If I install everything I own on Steam on my computer and then rip the Ethernet cable out of the wall, I can play all those games.
Yeah.
Like, it's as simple as that. And I don't like, I'm not like a paranoid conspiracy, stand up for the games person or anything. Like, I don't believe that there's like energies aligning against us to take our games away or whatever bullshit is going on over on 4chan or whatever. But like I do think that like giving up control and local hardware and the ability to run these things, not necessarily even just disk, but be able to install the game on our local hard drive and run it from there one way or the other, however we like, to use mods to tweak INI files, to do what, like I know they're not positioning it to be a competitor to PC gaming. They're kind of pitching it more as like our new console sort of experience, except without having to have a console and pay $500 for a console, which makes some sense in a world where the next generation of consoles are clearly going to be pretty expensive, just by the nature of what they're going to put in them to make them kind of a worthy leap. This soon after the Pro and the X. But like the only way it makes a lot of sense in terms of the trade-off and the downsides of it is if you're saying, well, yeah, I move the analog stick and it takes a full second and a little more to get Alexios to move. but I'll put up with that in exchange for not paying $1,500, $2,000 for a top-level gaming rig. Whereas, as they show, the games look really good if you have a quality connection and if it's streaming.
Yeah. I'm shocked at how
all
good
that,
they look.
all the water and all that kind of, there's stuff like that that's too expensive to really run on a home rig if you can get the connection right. But it's like I just don't see where this leads right now. Maybe it's a future-proofing thing, but like. People that are like video games but don't want to own hardware or pay $500 for hardware. Okay, but they do have like a 400 megabit down internet connection.
Yeah.
Or you don't want to pay that much for a console, but you do want to pay however much a month for this. And like I just don't know. It feels like a very small Venn diagram intersection of the people that would actually benefit from this or be interested in it. And I'm interested to see kind of how it plays out, because right now they're just sort of doing that Apple thing where they tell you how awesome something is and you totally want it, even though you're like, why would I wait? I don't want that. Because look, even if I buy this Stadia thing and subscribe to it, I still got to buy a PS5 to play God of War 2. I still got to buy a Switch 2 to play the next Zelda or whatever they put on. It's like it doesn't solve the problem of owning a console for me. It's another way to play multi-platform console games, and like maybe the thing that Jade Raymond comes up with or her team she's running, maybe they'll come up with some exclusives. I'm like, well, I got to have that, and if that's the only way to play it, I'll do it. But like, it doesn't. You're basically adding another thing for me to buy. You're not replacing the consoles I already am going to own.
No, that's absolutely accurate.
So like, I don't know why they keep doing that whole thing. And like, I wonder if you're going to end up with people that like get this thing and are like, wait, I can't play, God of War on this. I can't play Spider-Man 2 on this. Like, I thought this was going to be for everyone and the whole thing. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. I just you're still up against the literal speed of light when it comes to for competitive games. It seems like they've solved a lot of latency problems in the chain down to what's called the last mile, where really the only thing that can screw you up is the user.
Yeah.
But guess what?
They
no
screw up stuff
no
all
one's
the
better
time.
at screwing stuff up than the user. I promise you. It's a limited use thing, and I don't think it benefits us as gamers or as consumers to any degree, to any appreciable degree. And the other flip side of it is like, hey, you remember when Google Glass was the next big thing that was going to be how we all lived our lives with this stupid fucking thing on our face?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that was the biggest thing in the world?
Yeah.
Remember like you had the people that were in the beta, they were walking around, it's like, oh, you put it on. Yeah, it's
Jeremy
really cool.
Hoffman, I used to work with him. He came to work for 2 months straight with it on.
Oh yeah, he was super into it, and I tried his a couple times. Like, it's cool. It's like it's like this cyberpunk thing, and it's neat, and he's like, he said you did the Google Glass smile. You looked at you get this grin on your face. It's like, look at this tech, it's cool, but I'm still not wearing it. I'm not going to wear that thing. Yeah, it's like, and now when was the last time you heard that?
Yeah.
Before I just mentioned it, when's the last time you thought of Google Glass?
Yeah.
Or Google Plus?
Yeah.
Or Google Wave?
Or any of the other things.
Or any other things that they they ride for 18 to 20 months and then just like give up because it didn't do what they thought it was going to do.
I think that's a concern, certainly. I
think that it's going to go away in like 18 months? Probably not, but I feel like that's when you're going to start to see that they're going to start to have to shuffle the deck chairs on the Titanic a little bit to try and figure out what they're...
I think that'll be the inflection point for it, though, because that's when the stuff that Jade Raymond is working on will start coming to fruition. And that will be the day where they figure out if this thing's going to work or not.
Mm-hmm. I just don't fully buy it, and I think it's telling. I mean, it's cool that they showed Doom. Doom is sort of a make or break thing for that because Doom is so fast and so split second.
Yeah.
But I thought it was telling that one of the main demos was also Assassin's Creed Odyssey, much the same way that the demo for PlayStation Now was Uncharted 2 or 3. I can't remember which one.
Yeah.
But I remember playing that, and it did feel pretty much the same. But the trick on that is they're using Odyssey the same way they used Uncharted, where both characters in both of those games have a bit of a wind-up to their animation when you start to run.
Yep.
And I thought it was very
It
smart.
masks it. Yeah.
It's very smart of them to do that, but it's also very smart that I saw several people using their phones to do like latency tests, like just sort of informally. They're using super high frame rate cameras, like 240 frames per second cameras. And they were not testing it with the character; they were testing it with the cursor in the menu screen. Yeah. And it was it's like a full second.
Wow, that's bad.
Before the cursor reacts to your, and I'm like, that's not good enough. And I don't think there's anything you can really do about that because you have to send the controller signal to the server farm, and then you have to process the reaction of the game. You got to send it back to me, and then my stuff has to unpack it and show it to me.
Yep.
And like that's about as good as that's ever going to get. And you know what? I can't play Sekiro like that, so go away.
No, you can't. You're right. I think Google was in a tough position because it debuted this technology to the hardcore gaming audience.
And teraflop. I didn't even look at the screen till now.
And perfect timing with these graphics coming up as well. And I get why Google did it. It's because it's trying to reach the developers, and that's what GDC is all about. Unfortunately, everything that happens at GDC is consumed by people like us. It's not consumed by people who are more casual and maybe play games on their phone, but might be interested in maybe upgrading. It's us. And we do have consoles, and we're going to buy the next Nintendo console, and we're going to buy the next PlayStation, and we're going to buy the next Xbox. And so you're right. It is like a redundancy for us.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really cool demo they did here. Like, it's a very clear difference between what you can do with their multi-GPU with the single. But at the same time, I'm like, so you're aiming this at people that don't care enough about games to pay $500 for a console, but they're going to be super blown away by your water tech? Like,
well, they will be. I mean, a pretty game is a pretty game.
Cool,
Anyone
but like,
can appreciate
what does it do? What does it do? Like,
what do you mean by what does it do?
How does it affect anything? It's just pretty. Like,
but I mean, people care about graphics.
But then, are they going to?
In fact, most people care about it a lot more than we do.
Are they going to get a 500 gigabit down? You know, it's like.
Yeah. Well, let me get to it. I was trying to kind of get to my argument there. So, this is, to me, is not, despite the fact that they have signed up Phil Harrison and all these all-stars to work on the project, this technology is not for the people that these folks are used to making games for. This is for the casual folks. It's for somebody who wants to find a cheap way to play great-looking games. They're saying that they're going to be able to stream at 8K at 120 frames per second eventually. I'll believe that when I see it, because you're absolutely right.
Theoretically,
yeah. Right. There's no pipe big enough, at least in America.
If that Google Fiber thing comes back in force, I mean, because
they bailed on that. That's something else that they kind of bailed on.
Yeah, well, it fizzled a bit. It's still in play. It's still happening. But like there was was it in Kentucky or something?
I think so.
Where like basically they just kind of hit a bunch of like red tape walls more or less, and they gave up.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But there's still, Google Fiber's still around, but it's like you still got a fair chunk of the country that's like working off satellite, and until you get like that SpaceX low Earth orbit and asynchronous thing where like they're just going to like basically like spit satellites in a low Earth orbit, and like instead of geosynchronous, which is slower, you're going to have, it's almost like the idea is basically like you're going to have low Earth orbit satellites that create like a giant Wi-Fi field.
Yeah.
That like of like super high speed internet, and you're going to be able to get that in more rural areas, and like these satellites are just going to crash periodically and they'll just spit more up. I don't know how well that's going to work, but like it sounds like it's going to be a more functional solution. But that's not happening tomorrow. Like it feels like Google is kind of.
But that's the thing.
Google has the potential.
This isn't for tomorrow. This is Google's play
for tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow
and many, many more tomorrows to come. In fact,
we give you the fucking Macbeth references on our podcast. Yeah. How you doing?
And in fact, I would say that I don't think Google even expects this to do much of anything for several years. I think this is a play by Google that they're looking a decade, 2 decades down the road.
Like my instinct would be to agree with that, but at the same time, they continually do things that you'd think would fall into that category, and then they just abandon them.
They do. I mean, that is the concern, is that Google's track record for sticking with its ideas and its projects is not glowing.
Now, granted, that doesn't mean that the technology disappears. They've still got it. They could always bring it back when they think the time is right. But it's weird to me that they think the time is now. I'm also curious because, like you say, GDC is developers and us is basically who's seeing this. I'm very curious how their pitch or how their presentation to a more mass audience will be for this, because I don't think it's going to be all these white screen PowerPoint slides. I think you're going to have to do this in a more.
It'll be like a Nintendo, with families together and them going from one room with their TV and then going into their bedroom, and there it is on their phone.
There's just a point at which you're kind of like, well, okay, why do I want this more than, say, Game Pass or PlayStation? Well, nobody wants.
Well, you have to have the heart. You have to pay the $500 still.
But I mean, nobody wants PlayStation now. But like,
it's tough because as hardcore gamers, our first instinct is to be like, I don't like it. So maybe no one else is going to like it. But I don't think that that's the case. I think if casual people see the same presentation that we saw, their mouth is going to hang open. Because we've been exposed to some of the early tech around this stuff. It wasn't a big sort of wall of awesome that hit us. But I think a casual person watching this it is going to do some really cool stuff. Let's be honest. It is going to do stuff that no other platform does. Whether you're willing to trade off latency where you can't really play shooters and fighting games and really tough like timing-based games like From Software stuff, that's up to you. But I think for the vast majority
you're really
of people...
cutting down. I mean, I'm playing Tetris at that point.
No, not at all. You can play any action-adventure game. You can play every action RPG, which is the biggest genre in the industry. You can play all the puzzle games. You can play RPGs.
As long as I don't want to parry anything.
Right, but you're talking about games where it's like, you have a 30-frame window to do something or it fails. Like, first of all, a lot of those games aren't popular with the mass audience. They're kind of niche titles, even within our group of folks. So
Skyrim, Assassin's Creed.
No, you can play Skyrim on that fine, man. You can play anything on it. Honestly, the only genres that I really have an issue with are like From stuff, like anything where you have like fighting games, shooters, online shooters. I could play a campaign on this fine. Would I want to play online against other people? Probably not. But
I mean, I don't know. Like, do I want to introduce an extra second of lag to my shooter?
I really don't think it's a second, man. I mean, you may have seen one little cell phone video that showed that. I mean, I
saw 3.
Google's not going to roll this out if it's that bad. They're just not, man.
But it is
that.
But the speed of light is the speed of light.
Yeah.
Like you can't get better than that.
PlayStation Now doesn't have a second lag, and I guarantee you this is going to be at least as good as PlayStation Now. At least. And my guess is it's going to be significantly better than PlayStation Now.
I just don't buy it. I mean, if
you don't have to buy it. It's free.
No, it's not.
It is. You can even use your PlayStation and Xbox controller.
You got to subscribe to the thing.
It's $9 a month or whatever. That's chump change.
When did they say that? I didn't see any pricing stuff.
They have not announced pricing, but it would be asinine to charge more than like $10 a month for it.
I mean, I agree.
That's my guess.
I agree, but I don't think it's going to be $9 a month. I think it's going to be like $50.
You think it's going to? Whoa! Wow! Oh, that would be a deal breaker. I don't think.
I think it's $10.
I think $10 to $15 a month is max.
I mean,
price.
I agree with you that that's what it should be, but I don't think that's what it's going to be at all.
No one would pay that. You could buy your console in 6 months. Then they have to make it a value proposition for people who don't want to spend $500 on a console.
Yeah,
There's no way they're going to charge that much. No way.
They got to make. I mean, you're talking about an economy of scale in that regard that they're never going to get to then, because you got to still pay the developers. I mean, how do you pay the developers if no one's buying games? What do you do the Apple thing where you're paying per time? And that's the other thing is like think about what happens if this actually does take off in a big way. You're talking about changing the paradigm of how games are made. You're talking about we can no longer do quick reaction parry animations because it'll require it to be too fast for the latency on this.
This is never going to be like...
You're talking about... No, if you're talking about...
This is not going to replace consoles. I think that's another thing that people are freaking out about.
I'm not talking about replacing consoles.
Our consoles aren't going away.
I'm talking about if the way Google does this, if the Stadia becomes the way people, the mainstream audience decides to basically... voting with their wallets sort of says, this is how we prefer to consume video games. And the other companies realize, like, well, we can't sell consoles anymore. We gotta move forward with this. And, like, if you're going to make games and the majority of people that are going to play it in the mainstream audience are going to be playing it in a scenario like this, you're like, well, we can't have a 2 or 3 or 5 frame window for this. We need it to be 10 frames. And that changes how you design that game. And the other thing is if you're paying developers the way the Apple thing is, if you're paying developers per time played by sort of the way ratings work in TV. Like the more time people spend playing, the more, which kind of sucks if your game's 3 hours long and like Skyrim is the other your competitor. Yeah. Bethesda's making a lot more money from fewer people in that situation. You are basically going to be driven to adopt what we would think of now as mobile game tactics, like ways to keep the audience captive and
because all you care about is
all you care about is retention.
I mean, you can even do something silly like just add load times when there shouldn't be load times. I mean, it can get really dirty. Like,
especially because like that was one of the points they bring up is like the load time. Load times.
We're going
to
get to Apple in a bit. We're going to talk about Apple Arcade in a bit. I'm much less excited about that than I am for this. I'll say that. But
I will admit though, at least Apple showed me some games I don't own.
That's true. Yeah.
There's a couple games on that service that I'm actually pretty excited about because of what they are and what they're a follow-up to. Whereas this is like sort of like, here's a different way to play things you can play on the other boxes just fine. Like the live or die on this for me is going to end up being what Jade Raymond and her internal people can produce as an exclusive where I can't play it anywhere else. That's the thing that could get me in. Just like everything, just like everything. It's the same reason I'd buy a PS5 to play God of War 2 or whatever else, Ghost of Tsushima 2 or whatever they're going to put out.
This tech does do some pretty freaking cool stuff, though. that you can't do on any other platform. Like just that instant access to a game. You see a game and you like tap it and there you are. You're right in the game. You're playing it right away. There's none of that. You don't have a chance to second guess yourself. It's like those impulse buys are absolutely like impulse buys.
I mean, I can't do a counter in Batman Arkham City, but I can play Arkham City real fast.
Yeah.
Like there's an irony there.
I mean, look, you haven't used the tech yet, so I think you should tread a little lightly on banging on it and assuming it's going to be terrible. Is that fair?
I don't think it's going to be terrible. I just think it's going to be not good enough to be anything I care about. Like that's not, what they're showing here isn't terrible. Like what they're showing here is a lot of cool tricks. But cool tricks doesn't mean it does anything useful to me. Like
well,
I don't have any use for this.
Well,
I have zero use for this.
I wouldn't say I have zero use because my PC, I have a GTX 1080. This destroys my PC. Am I okay playing most games on this instead of my PC? Abso-freaking-lutely. Absolutely. I have no problem with that at all. Now, would I play a fighting game or a shooter online or a game like Sekiro? Hell no. But that's 3 genres out of 20. And I think that's what Google's going for. It's we're not going to have esports tournaments for Call of Duty running on Stadia. But, I mean, I could play the single-player campaign of Call of Duty on that fine. I wouldn't have any problem with it. In fact, it would be better for me because it would look better than anything I could ever afford to play it on. There's a market there, but I think the problem was they debuted it to the core.
There might be a market there, but I don't see it hitting critical mass to the point that you can charge a low enough subscription price that still gets everybody paid in the end. I mean, I know it's not my business what their economics are because I'm not a shareholder, but I just don't see how that works.
But what overhead does Google have? All those nodes, they didn't just set up all these nodes just for Stadia. Those have been there.
Well, that gets into kind of why I think they're really doing this and why they're so interested in this kind of idea, whereas there's other people, because clearly, Sony has similar tech. We know Microsoft is working on similar tech.
Yeah.
Because and the reason the way they're trying to kind of force this Netflix model on video games and
on everything.
On everything.
I mean, that's just the way everything's going.
But I think the forcing it on video games is interesting because I don't think video games as a medium makes a lot of sense to use that model on. Just because of how big things are, how much data has to move.
It's certainly different.
The fact that you require input. Netflix makes sense because you don't need to have any input from me beyond press play. Like the fact that you constantly need input and interaction between the end user makes this a very strange thing to want to do as a streaming service.
It is, yeah.
And what I think is happening here.
It's a square peg in a round hole.
Right, like I said, solution in search of a problem. But I think the problem they're actually trying to solve is there's a thing, and you'll see people talk about this sometimes when you get into kind of deep business stuff on Amazon and such. Hassan Minhaj's Patriot Act has an episode about it where he goes into a very interesting thing about how, talking about Amazon and how they can use their retail leverage to sort of get what they want by making massive losses. There was the example given was diapers.com where Amazon wanted to buy them and diapers.com didn't want to sell, so Amazon just slashed prices of diapers. So people you'd be crazy not to buy diapers on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
And eventually diapers.com lost so much business they ended up selling themselves to Amazon, and Amazon got what they wanted. In the process of doing that, Amazon lost hundreds of millions of dollars because of the slashing the prices.
Right.
Because the diapers didn't cost them any less wholesale. Yeah. They were literally losing money on purpose to get what they wanted.
To get
but the reason Amazon can do that is because they make all their money on AWS.
Yep.
53% of the entire internet is hosted on Amazon servers.
SIFTD hosted on AWS.
Yeah, tons.
Yep.
And when you look, Netflix is hosted on Amazon servers. Netflix is 15% of internet traffic.
That is mind-blowing.
15%. And think about, I mean, Netflix
Crazy.
is, and that's, streaming high definition movies is no small data feat, but Stadia, if you do some napkin math, you're talking about 20 gigs an hour on that thing.
It is 20 gigs
you're talking
an
about,
hour,
think about the percentage that would be if that became critical mass. And now think about the fact that Google controls that, not Amazon.
Yeah.
This is Google's play to be in the same ballpark as Amazon in that regard. That's
going
what they're
back
doing.
to what I was saying, their overhead isn't that much. All their
Right.
overhead are the
But
people
what
who
I'm
work
saying-
in the department and the game development.
But what I'm saying, the point of what I'm saying there is that this thing doesn't exist because it's a good idea for us to play games this way. It exists because they think this is a way to solve a problem they're having in terms of market share and in terms of competition.
It's possible.
This is not a consumer-facing product in terms of its use cases. It's a thing they're trying to convince us is a good way to do something differently that we've been doing a certain way a long time. And I ain't buying it.
Yeah, data caps.
I mean, I don't buy their story, and I might buy it if the subscription price is as cheap as you're speculating.
Yeah.
Just to see how it works.
I will say this: I feel pretty good that we got this far into the conversation before we talked about data caps, because that was the low-hanging fruit that everybody discussed immediately. That was like, yeah, Captain Obvious, obviously with data caps.
And it's ironic because like data caps aren't a big thing in America.
I don't have one.
I don't have one. The big problem in America is infrastructure.
Yeah.
If you're outside of LA or New York,
yeah.
you've got a question mark about this thing in terms of the quality you're going to be able to play it at. Conversely, Europe has pretty good internet, but they've got data caps everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you're streaming 20 gigs an hour,
insane. Yeah.
Because that's just what it is.
I also have a feeling that if this ever caught on and became a big thing, I have a feeling that suddenly our ISPs would have data caps.
Especially with
it may be much bigger than what people are used to, but there would still be data caps.
Well, especially with Ajit Pai killing the net neutrality thing,
because
which
they can do whatever they want.
Opens the door to
do whatever they want. Yeah. I wonder if Google knows sort of, and it should, it knows its rollout of Google Fiber. And if it's saying, okay, well, people don't know this, but we do, that by 2026 or 2027, we're going to have this percentage of penetration across these geographical regions. And maybe it's just saying, look, we got to get this seeded now. We have deep pockets. They do. We could run this for the next 200 years and not make a penny. It would really put a dent in what we're doing. But we need to get in at the ground floor now and get people thinking about it. And by the time everyone's sort of internet is up to the place where we know it's going to be because we're the ones doing it, maybe then that's when they think it's going to turn over. But I think the big problem is that everybody is acting like this is supposed to be a big thing in like 2 months. And I don't think that's Google's plan at all. If it is, they're idiots. Well, I know they're not idiots.
Well, I also don't fault people for thinking that, because the presentation on this, and I think we'll also run into this when we get to the Apple Arcade thing, the presentation is kind of standard Silicon Valley tech presentation where things can't just be neat. They have to be the biggest revolution in the history of everything you've ever done. You will never eat the same again. It will never be, it's like, and at a certain point you got to step back and be like, it's streaming game video, dude.
I just watched that documentary about Theranos.
We've been doing that since OnLive back in 2011. It's
but
not
look,
a
this
thing.
does do stuff that none of those others do, and some pretty cool
but
stuff.
But it's an evolution, not a revolution.
Yeah.
And it's also like you still haven't sold me on what I need this for. Granted, and that's the thing, is like I'm in LA, I'm in the middle of LA, and I have a connection that could run this at kind of the idea. I don't think I have the connection to do 8K whenever that happens. But like,
they're saying you're going to be able to play it buttery smooth on 5G.
But I have that I have the connection that can do it. I do have access to Google Fiber on this street if I decided I wanted to switch to that, which I haven't so far. But I'm set up to do this in an ideal situation from a tech perspective. I just don't understand why I should want it until I start to see some stuff I can't play anywhere else that I just can't resist. Which might happen. Look, they hired some good people for if anyone can put together some stuff that I look at and say like, well, I don't care if it takes a second of extra lag. I need to play this new crazy idea Jade Raymond came up with. Like, that's a totally plausible scenario, but they haven't gotten to that point yet. They're not ready to show that yet.
Personally, me looking on down the road and knowing the PC that I have right now, would I be willing to spend $10 to $15 a month to have an 8K PC rig that will play 70% of the games I want to play? Yeah. That would become like what the Xbox One X is for you right now. It would become my third-party machine. I would still own a PlayStation, I'd still own an Xbox, I'd still own a Switch or whatever the hell it's called at that point to play the first-party stuff, but I would start playing all the third-party stuff on this. Instead of spending, $2 or $3 grand to build a rig that could do it, I would just spend $10 a month. That, even me as a core gamer, I could see areas where I would use this service, provided it's not a complete frickin' disaster.
I just don't, I know just because of what I do and how I am, I will always have the hardware to play these games locally.
Yeah, you will.
And I will never choose not to. The only reason I would use a Stadia is to play exclusive stuff. And that's fine. It's why I buy Nintendo consoles too.
That's not out of the ordinary.
It's not a shot at them at all in that sense. It's just I don't have any interest in giving up control of that kind of. I would rather build my own PC so I can have control over how to mod things, where I mod them, if something updates and breaks it, I can roll it back. If the drivers aren't working properly, I can change that. I mean, ideally, Google will be on top of that remotely anyway. But I like to be able to change the INI if I need to, if something goes weird with especially at launch. You can only tweak that so hard from remotely or count on this service to do that for you on a remote basis. I just prefer to have that kind of control. The other question I have, which is not really related to whether the service is going to be good or not, or whether you should buy it or not, but just in terms of kind of a longer range fan of the medium
What
question.
about this stuff? The integration with Let's Play. How big of a deal do you think that is?
I don't know.
It's kind of a big deal.
It's only a big deal if the right people embrace it, which is possible. Depends how much money.
You mean all the kids on YouTube? Letting them control the person's stream that they're watching?
It depends.
I think it could be pretty big.
It could be, but not necessarily. I mean, Google Glass could have been pretty big too.
Yeah, this is different though.
You got to catch it on.
Market.
I mean,
yeah, it is.
It's
playing video games ultimately.
It is, but it's got to catch on first, and
But this is something. This could be the Trojan horse that does it though. The Let's Play integration stuff, because this will hit the kids. And if their plan is really to make it a success in 6 years,
it doesn't depend on the kids. It depends on who Google pays to do it. If they want to throw $1 million at Ninja,
they will.
Yeah, probably.
They will. I mean,
but then he's playing a game that probably isn't going to work too well on this service. I wouldn't think.
By then, he could be playing 5 other games. Who knows?
Yeah, but I bet you one way or the other it's going to be an online competitive game, because that's the thing. Those are the things.
But that would also be something
traffic.
that Google would want. I mean, that's ideal, right? If you can get Ninja to play Fortnite or some online game on your service and still dominate.
Right, but I mean, if you're getting paid $1 million, you're probably going to pretend that the lag doesn't bother you. But
well, it all comes out in the wash. Either you dominate or you don't. Either you win or you don't. So. I don't know.
It'd be a good test. But my question,
I think a lot of people are brushing
I was
off.
getting to was, say, Jade Raymond or whoever she's hiring team-wise to make their game. Maybe they make an exclusive game that's really good. Maybe they make the next generation's equivalent of Shadow of the Colossus. It's a work of art.
Maybe they make Game of the Year.
Incredible.
Maybe they make a Game of the Year. What happens?
Well, that's what I'm saying. No, not in that, because I don't give a shit about that. What I'm saying is, what happens to that game?
What do you mean?
Stadia goes away, or Google shuts service down. Where's that game? They've never released a physical version of it. That game goes away forever.
Well, they still have the code.
What happened? Yeah, but what happens to it? Do they release it separately?
Google owns the rights, and then Google could either sell the rights off to someone else, or they could publish it themselves if they wanted to publish.
If they want to. I'm not comfortable with that at all. I think from an archival standpoint, in terms of the history of the medium and moving forward and making sure these things are preserved, and some of that comes from me as a film fan.
Sure.
We went through that early part of moviedom where no one thought anyone would ever want to see these stupid things again. So there's all these lost movies from back pre-1940s. I don't want to hit a point where some of the I'm sure, and there will be a piracy scene, or I'm sure there's some way to get that somehow. That someone would figure out. Although, again, I think part of this is just the streaming service thing is a giant DRM scheme.
I mean, look, the code is code. It's game code. It's just running on a machine somewhere else, and that signal's being beamed to you. It's not like it's crowd run or something, and it's this thing that you're splitting up and all these different processes. It's still built like a normal video game.
Right.
Every game made for it.
But Google owns that, and they may never give it back to you. They may never give it to us in that form. They just keep it in their vault. They go Disney with it. They just keep it in the vault. We never see it again.
Google may want to just make money off of it. I mean, it makes more sense that they would not do that.
I don't think so.
Why? You would make more money if you sell the game instead of just
because they're not interested
vault.
in that revenue, for the same reason that you have that thing where EA shuts things down even though they sold 7 million copies. It's not gonna make enough money to make it worth them even spending that time. It's that thing about how if Bill Gates is walking down the street, and he's if you're walking down the street and you see a quarter, usually we'll pick it up if you see a quarter on the ground, right? Just go. I mean, part of that's just because we grew up in arcades, and that's how quarters work. You see a quarter and you're
it actually has value.
Yeah. Even though it's $1 to play an arcade game now, but it's still, you and I see a quarter on the ground, we're like, hey,
that's worth something.
Quarter.
Yeah.
And Bill Gates, it would have to be $30,000 to be worth the time it takes him
to bend down.
That's kind of the thing here. It's we could release this game, but what's it going to do for us as a company? Nothing. We're making trillions of dollars doing this other stuff. So why would we want to start a publishing arm for physical retail copies of things? It doesn't make any sense to us. And that's a total hypothetical that has nothing to do with whether you should or shouldn't want to play or subscribe to Stadia. But just as a concept of this streaming idea, that concerns me that games become more ephemeral and exclusive things to these streaming services could get lost forever. I mean, I have concerns about the same thing about Netflix originals. Like sometimes some of those are released on video later. I think the Marvel stuff got released.
Yeah, they
on
usually
video
put
later.
it out on DVD.
But
or
like some of
Blu-ray.
those things could go away forever if they're not popular enough. And like,
But if
that's
you didn't care
terrible.
about it in the first place, why would you care that it went away?
Because it's still something. Like, I don't care about a lot of the movies that are like kind of archived from the silent era, but like they should still be there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that these. I mean,
Just for archival purposes
right.
or whatever. Yeah.
And maybe Google contributes a copy of all the code of their exclusive games when Stadia is over and gives them to the Library of Congress or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or some game museum somewhere. But like what I'm saying is like that aspect of this idea makes me very uncomfortable. And that's one of the things I mean when I say this streaming future is the future of gaming thing. It has nothing to do with what's good for us.
I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, honest, I wouldn't
And
say
that should make us very skeptical. We shouldn't just reject it outright, but we should be very skeptical about what Google's trying to sell us here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that is, to me, the most legitimate criticism / concern around Stadia is Google's track record.
Also, Stadia is plural. I feel weird calling a singular thing a plural.
Because it's not a singular thing. It's all these other people and connections and nodes all coming together into one platform. At least that was what I thought it was.
But like,
you know how they name products.
I know.
It's dumb.
Like it's just like you got to have the right vowels, and it's got to sound like kind of made up, but not made up.
Yeah, I don't mind the name of it. I think it's fine.
I just think it's Stadia.
But it makes me think that I'm sitting in a big arena with a bunch of other people.
It makes me think that like, I don't know. It makes me think of It makes me think of how screwed local communities get when they're forced to use tax money to build stadiums. That's what it makes me think of, actually. I don't have a lot of good associations with stadiums.
Yeah.
In terms of like good for the individual.
I think people have overreacted to this. I think it's human nature to be resistant to change, and I think people are seeing this as like the biggest change ever. And some of them have tried PlayStation Now or tried Gaikai or whatever, and maybe they weren't happy with it, and so they're assuming that this is going to be the same way. All fair, all valid, but I think at some point you gotta give new ideas a chance.
I gave this new idea a chance, and I think it's bullshit.
I haven't even tried it. You haven't given it a chance.
I tried PlayStation Now. I tried OnLive.
You have not tried Stadia.
I don't care. It doesn't do anything I care about.
You don't know that.
Of course
You're
I do.
shutting your mind down before you even give it a
not.
chance.
I don't have any use for a streaming game service because everything they've shown and everything they're going to show until they get to their exclusive in-house stuff is something I can play on any of the other platforms I own.
Can you play them in 8K?
I will be able to, yeah, because I'm going to actually build that PC because that's more important to me than saving like $20 a month on whatever this shit is. Like, I would rather have control of that. I realize I am not the universal use case in that regard.
Yeah.
But like, I also don't have anything that can display in 8K. So right now, it means I have to buy another $4,000 TV.
Yeah.
So I don't want to spend $300 on a game console, but I'm going to buy a $5,000 TV to play in 8K. Okay.
Again,
upgrade my thing to Google Fiber. Like that's 10 years out.
Again, I think you're falling in the same trap a lot of other people are. They're thinking, what is this going to be like next month?
I'm not falling into
That's
any
not what this is about.
I'm not
this
falling
is,
into any
again,
trap.
like the future. It's not
the
tomorrow.
future. It's the future because they're telling us it is. It doesn't have to be the future because it's not consumer friendly. It doesn't have to be that. We only have to be that if we embrace it.
I think some people would say it's very consumer friendly. It's
well,
like
those people are wrong.
But it depends. If you're a consumer that cares about usability and access, it's very user friendly.
Until that access is taken away,
friendly.
until the access that you don't have sabotages what you're trying to play.
But
until your internet goes down and you can't play anything because nothing
so
works without it.
much less for everything. You don't have to buy hardware. You're not spending $60 every time you buy a game.
I would rather have a Game Pass style service for that.
Okay, where you still can download stuff.
Download the thing, or I mean, the rumor is that Microsoft's streaming solution does in fact install stuff smartly to the hard drive to run it locally as it's needed.
Parts of it
which
locally.
I think is the most useful idea of this.
Well,
tech.
Microsoft seems pretty confident after this was announced. So
right, I can't begin
like
to understand how that would work.
Me either.
But smarter people than me are working on that, and have been for years.
Yeah.
So Microsoft's idea where you basically sort of have a constant local install that is updated as you need it to be, but you're still running stuff natively on your home hardware. That is, to me, the most useful idea here. But at the same time, like, why wouldn't, if I have the bandwidth to stream something like that, why wouldn't I just subscribe to Game Pass and download the whole thing in like 15 minutes and play it that way?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I mean by solution in search of a problem. If you have the hardware and the tech and the internet connection to run something like this, you also have a way to do it that's a lot more consumer control friendly. And like, I'm not resistant to change and to like movement to new things and all that stuff. I mean, I embrace digital. You know, when people are like, "No, I need to have it on a disc," I'm like, "No, fuck that. I'm totally into digital. So I buy probably 80 to 90% of my stuff digital at this point in this generation.
Yeah.
I'm not against that at all. If the change is beneficial to me or beneficial to the consumer in general, I totally understand. I'm totally into it. I don't see where that comes in here outside of very specific. You know, people can come up with these very specific use cases where someone doesn't have a ton of money, but does pay for a 500 megabit download connection every month, but doesn't want to own a console, but does want to play super high-end video games, so they get Stadia. And I'm sure that person is out there, but like, is there enough of them to subscribe for $9 to $15 a month to pay the fees that Google's going to have to pay to all these developers to make it worth their while to put it on this platform? That's a question that I think we're going to have to wait and see.
That is the billion-dollar question.
Almost literally. Yeah.
Literally the billion-dollar question.
I think we just need to know way more about how this thing, where the rubber meets the road on this
I think we both need to try it, first of all. I think that's a big thing. Both of us will have a better idea once we actually put it in our hands and give it a whirl.
Somewhat, but I continually remember when I tried PlayStation Now at an E3, it was the Judges Week thing, and it played really well. I was like, oh, that's impressive. And then I played it at home, and it fucking sucked.
Yeah.
You know, it matters where you play it, how you play it, and what you're doing.
These were ideal conditions for Google. Home court. They can set up the infrastructure however they want. They can control everything.
And that cursor on the Assassin's Creed Odyssey menu screen still moved like a slug.
Yeah.
So you know, like, I'll put
all the reports of this, other than how much bandwidth it was taking, were glowing when they put out the demo of Assassin's Creed Odyssey months ago. Everybody that used it was like, holy crap.
Well, it's impressive that it can work at all, but that doesn't mean it works well enough for me to say, like, I'd rather play it like this than not have it installed on local hardware. Like, there's nothing about this that makes me think that it's better than doing that. And I realize that there's a point at which you're like, oh, if you can run it in 8K, yeah, but you know what? That's in like 2024. So until then, I'm going to go.
I think that's what this play is, though.
By that point,
I think that's what everyone's missing. This isn't like coming out like this year to blow everyone away. I think this is a long play by Google. It's them finally getting into the industry, and I think they're trying to find a way to future-proof their technology so they don't have to do what the other guys have been doing, which is put out a new piece of hardware every 5 years. Yeah. It's this treadmill that you get on, and it just never ends. And it's big risk because you're manufacturing something that people have to buy, and you have to get shelf space for it, and you have to negotiate all those partnerships with retail. You don't have to do any of that with this. It's like all you have to do is just market it and make sure it works.
I think I do think that one element of this that maybe hasn't been discussed too much is, like, this is a really good, you know, this model they're going for here. This is a pretty good incentive for the other hardware manufacturers to finally go full digital.
Yeah.
Because if this doesn't flop, this is just another step towards cutting the retail brick and mortar out of the equation.
Well, I don't know if you heard this week, but Sony stopped selling game codes to
GameStop.
I saw that.
The individual game cards.
Getting dirty out there, yeah.
You can still buy the
just the points
money
cards. Yeah, you just can't buy, like, hey, I want to buy Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Can I get the card for that? Yeah, you can't do that anymore. Which
that's interesting.
It is interesting.
I wonder what the
end game
thinking
is for
behind that is.
I think we'll find out when we hear about the PlayStation 5. That's my guess.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But I'm certainly more optimistic about this than you are. I think that's safe to say.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm not optimistic in terms of its chances for success. It could be. I mean, I don't always know the zeitgeist off the top of my head, but I do know that if it is successful, that'll be a shame, because we are, as a industry, we will be embracing something that is very much not in the consumer's best interest. And
I buy all physical, by the way.
And
I buy all my games physical. I don't buy anything digital.
And it won't be the first time.
I absolutely like to collect games and have something in my hand after I pay for it. So even in that regard, I've fought progress, if that's what you want to call it, in that regard. But I can just see the opportunities for this. And I think some of the stuff that intrigued me more was sort of the interactivity. You don't need strategy guides anymore because you have Google Assistant that's integrated into it. And all the stuff that they're doing with streamers. And let's be honest, like that's where it's all going. For them to do something that can enhance the experience of people watching other people play games, that's a pretty big deal. Now, is 6 years from now, are Let's Plays still going to be a big thing? I don't know. Who knows?
Do you?
People could burn out on that eventually. I don't know.
Do you think Amazon reacts to this?
I think no. I think if it's going to react to it, it's already been reacting behind the scenes. If it's not like, oh my God, Google did this, now let's get an announcement out there. No. If they do something like that, they've been working on it for a long time. And I would not be surprised if Amazon has been working on something like this for a long time. Amazon may have got sent back to the drawing board after last week, after it saw what Google was working on. But yeah, it's not going to just pull it out of its butt and be like, oh, well, Google's doing that. Well, we got this, and we haven't really done anything for it yet. That's just not the way.
But I mean, like, all these companies have endless things quietly behind closed doors they're working on.
Yep.
Could this force Amazon's hand on whatever they're working on in this?
Yeah, it's possible.
realm?
I mean, like you said, AWS is just
right. I mean, my thought was more like if the Let's Play, the live stream thing, strikes Amazon as like that's the thing, because Amazon owns Twitch.
All right.
So like you gotta keep up.
Yeah, or it could be a case where they try to lock Google out.
Yeah.
I mean, it could look at Google's API and figure out how it hooks into Twitch and live streams, but it has YouTube, obviously.
The idea is live stream on YouTube, which, by the way, sucks.
I know.
But like,
I don't think it'll stay on YouTube. I think they're gonna have to figure it out on Twitch.
Well, I tried to watch the Sony thing on YouTube today, and it crashed every 5 seconds.
Really?
I had to put it up on PlayStation. Eventually.
Weird. That's strange.
Like, it was terrible. It would not run in either browser. I don't know what the deal was.
In closing, I think there's some really cool ideas here. And while I agree with you, I will always own a console as long as they make them until they stop making them. I will always buy them and I will always own them. And I will always play first-party games on native hardware. I do see an opportunity, for me, personally, to enjoy Stadia. And I certainly see opportunities for people who are far more casual than me to enjoy it. It doesn't surprise me that you're not particularly excited by it. It doesn't surprise me that a lot of the core gamers aren't excited by it. I think they were put in a weird position where they had to debut it to this audience, but probably knew it wasn't the best idea because we're hypercritical and they knew we were going to dig into it. But you have to debut it at GDC if you want to get developers on board. Mm-hmm. And you also have to debut it to us, let's be honest, because that's the only way that information is going to get spread big enough. Even if we hate it, we're going to talk about it.
Well, it's also there's a precedent for putting this kind of thing out at GDC for the first thing. It's like the Xbox.
Yeah.
The original Xbox, Microsoft did not expect it to set the world on fire. The whole thing was like, we need to control this space. Yep. We're going to spend some money, and the next system is going to be and sure enough, the 360 was the next thing. Now, obviously, the model's different because there is no next system on this. But like, I think there's precedent to say that using GDC as a starting point for this sort of like new entry into the industry,
it's a smart one.
It's where you got to start, really.
Yeah.
At the very least, it starts the conversation among the right people.
I think
I don't mean us. I mean people at GDC. The developers are the ones that have to get on board with supporting your new platform.
And they were smart to hire Phil Harrison and all the other people that they hired.
Harrison's a good pick. Jade is a great pick.
Because people see him and they're like, I know them. I like them. I liked what they did before.
That's honestly like the one thing that scratches in the back of my mind as I look at this, and I'm just like, I don't see it, I don't get it, I don't want it.
Why did they sign on?
Yeah, why did Jade Raymond say yes if there wasn't something here?
And she had plenty of opportunities to choose from a plethora of positions. So
and she picked this for some reason, so she must know something. There must be something about it. She's not any kind of naive or inexperienced person when it comes to this.
Right.
She is a hardcore gamer. She knows her stuff. And if there's something in there that she sees as maybe it's just the unlimited resources of Google to make a couple games she's always wanted to make. That could be a thing.
Possible.
But like she's running this thing, and her reputation's on the line when it comes down to how this thing ends up performing. And she must see something that is worthwhile in there. So that's kind of my one bright spot is like, if she's in, if Phil Harrison's in, there must be something there. I mean, less Phil Harrison because Phil Harrison, does
Phil and I,
does his exact thing,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really matter where you are when you're in that position. You're just running the company.
I remember back in the day, I interviewed him. I think it was at GDC, actually. And it was right after we started seeing real footage of PlayStation 3 games. We saw what Killzone really looked like. And what was the game that had like the mud, the racing game? Oh, MotorStorm.
MotorStorm, yeah.
And we had seen what those games really looked like, and I just laid into him. I didn't lay into him. I just put the ball on the tee. And I was like,
we did something similar. It was at GDC.
Yeah, I think it was.
And like we had something. I don't remember if we were before you or after you, but he had
mad.
enough.
Oh yeah, he was mad. I made him angry. I wonder if I could dig up that interview. But one thing I will say
is, and it's scary to make him mad because he's very large.
He's large, and he's also very measured.
Yeah, it's intense.
And I got him to crack because he knew I was right. He tried to stand there and say that the games looked the same or better than what they showed when they debuted the PlayStation 3.
Oh, boy. Yeah,
and he knew it was total crap. He knew it was crap. I'm like, so where's the mud and the environmental stuff in MotorStorm? He's like, it's there. I'm like, no, it's not, dude. Like, anyway, maybe somebody could dig that up on YouTube. I've tried to find it before, but it was one of my legendary interviews I did with Phil Harrison. Back when I used to do interviews, I did not pull punches. I felt like it was my duty to ask the hard questions. It doesn't seem like that happens anymore.
It was a different time.
It was a different time, absolutely. Now I think that, with all the influencers and everything, I think they'd have a heart attack if someone asked them a hard question at this point. So anyway, I would just suggest keep an open mind. And I would also say that don't look at Stadia as if it's like coming out next month and it's going to suck or whatever. I think this is a long-term play for Google.
Sometime, right?
What?
They said this year.
It is coming out this year, this fall, I think it is. So it will be released, but I think you have to kind of recalibrate how you look at platforms when you start talking about this stuff. You can't really say, okay, this is how the PlayStation 4 was, so this is how Stadia should be. It changes everything in how you deal with your business. And I think one issue that they are going to have is when you're running PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo, as interest starts to wane, you always know you have that new thing coming to get interest back into it and get people excited again. When you have a platform that's flat and is just there forever, how do you do that?
Well, if you're going to go that far with the Netflix model, what makes people excited about Netflix? Netflix original content.
Yeah. Again, content.
And that's what they're going to mean. That is basically what Jade's job is to make sure that internally they are pulling out stuff that constantly keeps you interested. And like it's a lot of responsibility, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of money to spend for Google.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how often new stuff pops up on Netflix, and that and not everything hits, not everything but you're talking about Bird Box, and then suddenly you're talking about the Ted Bundy tapes, and then you're talking about the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, and then Stranger Things has their new trailer. That's the thing that keeps people talking about Netflix and getting engaged with Netflix is just this constant flood of stuff you can only get on Netflix.
Yep.
And that is basically where this is going to live or die, is the stuff you can only get there.
I do not want Jade's job. I
do not envy her, but at the same time, I know she loves an impossible challenge, so it's probably she's right there in her element.
It's a good hire. Yeah, absolutely, it's a good hire.
And it's an even more sensible hire now that we know what this is, because we are talking about someone who helped build Assassin's Creed's technology from nothing.
I know.
From scratch. It took them 7 years, and they're basically like, can we do this? Like, that was the big question. Was like, can this even be done? And in the end, they did it.
She's a perfect hire because she has the chops, but she also hasn't done that job already for like 10 years at Sony or Microsoft or wherever. She's going to come in with a fire. She knows it's all on her, so it'll be interesting to watch. But I'm certainly more excited, I think, than most core gamers for this. It would never be like my only platform. And I don't think even Google believes that that'll be the case for most people. But I would have no problem replacing my PC with Stadia.
But that's the interesting thing is like that seems to be sort of the use case that makes the most sense, but it's absolutely not how they positioned it.
Yeah, you're right.
They positioned it as a console competitor, period.
No, you're right.
Like, they didn't even mention PC stuff.
That's why there are things called pivots. All right, let's move on. We're
That'll
already
be what they call the next one.
They might call it
the Google Pivot,
the Pivotia, or whatever the hell.
Yeah, what's the Latin plural for pivot?
All right, let's move on. We got to get going. We got tons of more stuff to get to. So obviously, the Stadia reveal happened at GDC, but it was a big enough story to talk about itself. But we want to talk about GDC in general, a roundup of the show. 29,000 people this year. Already scheduled for next year for pretty much the same
29,000 people
week.
were at the rock show.
Yeah.
Yes.
which is typical for GDC.
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, it's about what Moscone holds.
Yep. What were your takeaways from GDC other than Stadia?
We got some really good game announcements.
Yeah, big ones.
Sequels to some classic stuff I never thought I'd see come back.
Yep.
I was pretty pleased.
Yep, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2.
Did not see this one coming, especially not from most of the same people.
Yeah.
Bloodlines is a great RPG.
And a lot of people that are watching this probably don't even know.
No, it's not tremendously well known. It was only on PC. It is on GOG.
Yeah.
It's on GOG and Steam, but if you buy it on GOG, it comes with the unofficial fan patch already pre-installed, which makes it way better and more playable. It's a great RPG and kind of the traditional it's sort of like what Deus Ex is trying to do now.
Yeah.
Is from that tradition. I guess some people who would call it an immersive sim, but I hate that term. But it's crazy in one of those things where like you pick from based on the old Vampire the Masquerade pen and paper role playing game, but you pick your clan and your clan like if you know stuff about Vampire, you know that like there's a clan called the Nosferatu, which are like monsters or like sewer dwelling chud monsters. You can pick that as your character, and you actually have to like use the sewers, or people will just scream when you run through the streets because there's a monster in the street. Yeah. Like it changes the game completely. You can play a Malkavian who's a crazy person, and like you have to communicate through people in crazy rant. It's like the way it changes the game based on what you pick, how you design your character, and how you want to play.
It's really
your character.
unlike any
it's
other
incredible.
game. Yeah.
It's an incredible piece of work.
Do you think that they'll have those tenets in this one? They kind of have to, don't they?
They did several interviews, and they straight up said, like, yes, that's a big deal for them. They're going to keep that in there. They are apparently going to, they want to address the kind of the mental illness idea a little more gently because, it's a different time. It was 15 years ago. You can't really just be like, he is crazy. Like you can't do that anymore. Like you have to kind of treat that in a more gentle respect. I believe it sounds like you're going to be able to pick your pronouns.
Yeah.
Based on your character, they might be the first game where they actually voice alternate pronouns for your characters.
Yeah.
They basically are being, for a game about monsters that suck your blood and murder you, they are being shockingly inclusive and thoughtful about what they're doing here. So I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of like kind of bringing back the sort of complex RPG that changes itself based on your choices in a meaningful way as opposed to sort of
frivolous way.
Yeah, I mean, we've played kind of the Mass Effect sort of thing where, I love Mass Effect, don't get me wrong, huge Mass Effect fan, but, like, you still end up at the same end point, more or less, whereas, like, Bloodlines was, like, you could change stuff drastically and permanently if you made one poor or hasty decision. Obviously, you can scum your way out of that stuff, but, like, there's really not much else like it. And then still isn't to this day.
At this point,
I highly recommend if you've never played it before to get it on GOG with that unofficial fan patch included and play through it and see what it's all about because it's the best reason to be excited about the second one is because of the first one. And it's a lot of the same people making the second one, so that's also excellent.
Yep. Next up, System Shock 3. Got the first teaser trailer for that.
Big fan of System Shock 1 and 2. In fact, System Shock 3's announcement caused the remake of System Shock 1 to put more footage out, which is also great.
That is great.
I may be a little more hesitant about this one because System Shock 2 is kind of a masterpiece, and I would worry about sort of repeating, because I've already seen Shodan again there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really do it without Shodan, but like at the same time, it's like, are you going to be able to top what 2 did? I don't know. But Warren Spector's involved, so it's let's say cautiously optimistic, but also happy that System Shock is back in any form because like there's sort of the pedigree that BioShock comes out of in a very rough sense, and kind of the opportunity to go back and kind of bring that back and do it again with modern tech, even if it's just that, could be worthwhile all by itself.
Yeah. Very short trailer they released.
Yeah, not
literally
a lot.
15 seconds. Of
long
footage.
Way out. It sounds like. Whereas like Vampires, I think they said March next year.
Yeah.
So like exactly a year from announcement to release. That's pretty good.
System Shock 3
feels like it's a little earlier.
2021.
You're probably gonna be playing Cyberpunk 2077 before you play System Shock 3.
Or right around the same time.
Or it could be.
Yeah. I mean, Warren Spector isn't known to take short time developing games either.
No.
Only when he was working for Disney did he hit his targets.
Oh, Disney, you hit your
But the Deus Ex games, they were delayed over and over and over again before they ever finally came out. So, yeah, if Warren Spector said next year, I would believe earliest the year after that.
Yeah, I would feel like we might slide into the whole just in time for end of fiscal, Q1 2021 sort of thing.
Next up, Oculus Rift S, the sequel to Oculus Rift. Mm-hmm. They're finally saying, okay, this is the official sequel to Oculus. No sensors needed. Mm-hmm. The sensors are on the helmet. So you don't need cameras set up like you need with PlayStation VR. You don't need like all these sensors put in the corner of your room for room scale stuff. It's all self-contained on that helmet. Do you think that makes a big difference and moves the needle at all?
I think it does.
Yeah?
I think the more and more they can get to the point... Wow, that was weird. The closer and closer they can get to the idea of like, all you need to do to play a VR game is you pick up the goggles and you put them on and you're in. Like, that's the goal. Like, you will not... I don't think you will get mainstream penetration until it is that simple. Until you do not have to drill holes in your wall to put the lighthouses up, until you don't have to set up the camera just right, until you can't move around, until you have to stand and like calibrate the thing. When it's to the point where you can just walk in, pick the thing up, because that's the reason I don't play a lot of VR stuff still to this day.
It's a thing.
Is because of the setup.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
You have to like set it
if
up.
All I need to do is take this set of goggles and I go over to like a slightly open space in my house and put them on and start to play, I would play a lot more VR. So I think that is, I think it is will this be the thing that sets fire to the VR thing and makes it probably not.
It's $399, which is reasonable.
That's a decent price for what it, you're in console territory at that point. And it is self-contained, so you don't need a PC in addition or whatever, It's a great step. It's a big step. I mean, will it be the thing that does it? I don't know about that. But yes, I think this is, we're seeing VR tech go further and further in that direction. Although part of stuff like this makes me think like, God, I kind of hope PlayStation VR 2 is its own self-contained unit too, because PlayStation is putting out the stuff in VR that I really want to play.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I never would have guessed that was going to be the case, but that's how it's working out. Have you checked out that game, Boneworks?
No.
The most amazing VR game I've ever seen. Hands down, mind-blowing stuff. They just put out like a 15-minute demo with this YouTube channel called Node that basically went in with them and just played the game for like an entire day, and then they cut down the selects into like a 15-minute segment. It is amazing. It's on SIFTD right now. Just search for it. Use the search engine. It's like a 15-minute demo. It's mind-blowing.
What's it called?
It's called Boneworks.
Boneworks.
And it's a first-person shooter, but it tracks every finger. You can go
I heard about that.
You can go like this, and your character goes like that. You can flip the bird. You can give fucking devil horn. Like what it does, everything. You can pick up a gun off a table, and and you pick it up, and you actually like load it, and everything tracks like one. It's mind blowing.
Also, the other good thing about VR, you're never gonna be able to adapt that to streaming.
Nope, that's for sure. Absolutely.
Talk about nausea machine.
Yeah. Believe me, I know that better than anyone.
Add another second of lag to when you move your head.
It just instant barf. Just instant projectile vomiting out of my mouth. Next up, Oddworld Soulstorm. They showed another trailer for this. Still have not shown a single second of in-engine footage.
I keep forgetting this is a thing.
Yeah, because it literally, the last trailer we got for this was like a year ago. Now we get another one. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have a new chair. Oh, it's just a cinematic, pre-rendered CG thing again.
Do you care about Oddworld?
I don't.
Is that
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah,
I don't. Does anyone care about Oddworld in 2019?
I don't know. Like I always found it a little weird and off-putting. I think my favorite one was actually Stranger's Wrath.
Oh, weird. That's not typical.
The shooter with the guy with that was because I don't find these guys to be particularly appealing,
compelling me
or
either.
Interesting.
Nope, I never have. Even back on the original PlayStation 1, like a bunch of my friends got it. I'm like, I have no interest in that.
Firing sentient bullets out of a gun, out of a crossbow as they scream toward that. Yeah, that was more interesting to me. I don't know. I mean, I still wouldn't call Stranger's Wrath a great game by any stretch, but that was the one in the series that appealed to me the most.
Yeah, this whole universe.
Whatever that's worth.
This whole universe just doesn't really do much for me. I know they still do have some fans. They haven't really made a great game. I don't know if ever in this franchise.
Nah.
good, but not really great.
I mean, I think the original one was pretty good for its day.
I think people thought it was great back then.
It was a different time. It was,
Yeah.
it was kind of that world of like, it was sort of a successor or pedigree of like kind of out of this world and flashback and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was like, but games like that don't really exist anymore, at least not in the sense of the idea that Oddworld Abe's Odyssey was actually kind of a big hype thing at the time. That's weird.
It's mind-blowing to me.
It was a different
It
world.
really was a different world. Let's see, next up, and this one I kind of threw in for GDC, although people could argue that it really wasn't related to GDC, and that is Persona 5 The Royal.
Mm-hmm.
The sequel to Persona 5 just announced out of nowhere on Saturday.
Well, it's an update of Persona 5.
No, they're saying it's the sequel to Persona 5.
sequel?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like an expansion. Like, if you own Persona 5, you can't buy this for like $10. It's a full, brand new release that has obviously a brand new character in it. And I'm sure that all the characters from Persona 5 are going to be in it as well, because otherwise they'd call it Persona 6. But
So it's more of a Fez thing.
yeah, I mean, Atlas is saying this is the sequel to Persona 5.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't pay
Still
a
a
lot.
PlayStation 4 exclusive, I should add.
Yeah, which probably indicates that that vanilla Persona 5 will come to the Switch at some point.
That's what I thought too. Yeah.
Because otherwise, why is he in Smash Brothers?
Right, and they're going to throw Sony a bone, and they're going to be like, okay, well, we're going to
Yeah.
release this for Switch, but we're going to give you the next game exclusive as well.
For now.
For now, yeah. I mean, it's been, what, 2 years since Persona 5 came out?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me
That's good
if
enough
Royal ended
exclusivity.
up on Switch, in a year or two.
Yeah, me either.
But maybe, I don't know, man. Persona 5 was so long. Played like 100 hours to finish that, and like I don't know if I want to go back into that.
That's the most time I've spent playing a game probably in the last, 10 years, something like that. As far as, other than like a multiplayer shooter.
I liked
or
it, but it's like one of those. It's like The Division, where it's like,
I'm good.
Do I need to do more of that?
There's a reason these come out every like 5 years, yeah, because they're so gigantic and they just take over your life. So that was.
I guess it really depends when it comes out. If
Yeah.
it comes out at the right time when nothing else is around it, what else?
You know, if it was coming out next month, I'd probably play the hell out of it.
April would be,
April's not
a
looking
good
too
time for
hot.
Persona.
I'm going to be able to catch up on a lot of stuff in April, that's for sure. And let's see, finally, the last thing that was showed that it kind of caught my eye was a game called The Cycle. It's
know this
from the team behind Spec Ops: The Line. They've kind of reformed and started working on a new project that looks absolutely nothing like Spec Ops: The Line.
Yeah, that doesn't look a whole lot like. I bet that character is not voiced by Nolan North.
Who knows?
Oh, maybe he is.
Yeah, he probably is. I mean, it is a shooter like Spec Ops: The Line, but as you can see, it's a little more lighthearted, a little more airy. You're not going to have to make these life or death decisions that'll keep you from sleeping for the next 3 days like Spec Ops: The Line.
That we know of.
Yeah, that's true.
Probably a point where you have to decide if you should like make all rabbits go extinct or something.
That would be a tough call.
You have to watch them all die simultaneously on screens. Every screen is a different sad rabbit dying.
But this was kind of the other game that made some waves that was announced at GDC. World War Z also was getting a lot of press because they finally let the press play it. So a bunch of gameplay went up for that. There was like a horde mode gameplay thing that GameSpot published that was like mind-blowing. Have you seen it?
No.
So the horde mode, at least what the one that they have footage of, is like a stadium. And literally, just like the movie World War Z, you're at the top of this, and you just see literally thousands of, are they called freakers in that game? I don't even know. There's so many names for zombies now.
Freakers are days gone.
Yeah, freakers are days gone. Whatever the zombies are
remember what
called
they
in
call
World
them
War
anymore.
Z, there's just literally thousands of them just pouring over the
Infected,
wall,
probably.
maybe. But it looked pretty fun. Who knows? The game does not look that great in general, but that mode in particular.
I
pretty
am
fun.
real over the zombie thing at this point.
Yeah, it's not hard. I will say this though: the episode of The Walking Dead last night was crazy. It was like it was The Walking Dead's Red Wedding last night. The episode where just tons of people died that you never would have guessed would be chosen to be killed off, just in the blink of an eye. Like,
People got to have careers.
Yeah.
They got to go. They got to go move on.
Otherwise, what were your impressions of GDC? A good one? Bad one?
It's pretty good. I mean, it had more to see and talk about than like your average GDC. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of GDCs go by with pretty much nothing but a couple interesting panels and
And a tech demo
Yeah.
for NVIDIA or whatever.
Yeah.
That stuff was kind of toned down this year, actually.
yeah.
Because we're reaching the end of the cycle. And I think when we start talking about more seriously about PlayStation 5 and Xbox 2, I think next GDC, that's when you're going to see kind of the tech demos kind of step up again. But yeah, I thought as far as like announcements go, this was like the biggest GDC ever. Like,
yeah, it had a lot more meat on it for, if you weren't attending, you were just sort of interested as a fan of the hobby. There was a lot more to there's not.
Yeah, it's completely ignoring
just the number of
Stadia
announcements there of
right.
like major sequels is like, wow, that's unusual.
Yeah, if you completely even ignore Stadia and all the other stuff, just the games that were announced there was bigger than most GDCs. So I think it was a really good show.
And they're good choices to announce there because like they're games that could get lost in the E3 shuffle.
Yep,
so.
absolutely. So there you go. That's GDC.
Especially with no Sony to highlight them.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, third parties are probably scrambling right now.
Yeah.
They're like, Microsoft, it can just pick and choose what it wants. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally, it has the pick of the entire litter for what it wants in its press conference.
Yeah.
It's crazy that Sony would leave that door open, but it has. So, all right, that's GDC 2019. We're going to talk next about something that maybe should have been at GDC 2019.
Yeah, but that's not how they roll.
No, and that's Apple Arcade. Apple had its big services press event today up in Cupertino. It announced a bunch of stuff today, like an Apple credit card and like all this crazy
Apple
stuff.
TV Plus.
Apple TV Plus and like all these, again, content is king, a bunch of original content stuff for Apple TV. But most pertinent to us is it announced its gaming initiative, although after learning about it, I'm not so sure how much of an initiative it is. But Apple Arcade is its new gaming initiative. It is not, I've seen people online saying it's a game streaming service. I didn't get that from the presentation at all.
It's a game streaming service. You wouldn't be able to play it offline, which you can.
Yeah,
so.
You can play it offline without Wi-Fi, without any sort of wireless connection.
It's a game subscription service.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was too. But people have been reporting everywhere it's game stream. I think people are just extrapolating that out on. Maybe
but.
It might be, but it's a service from Apple, and it's actually just. It's not even like its own app. It's like a tab inside the App Store.
Yeah, it's like it's a new functionality of Apple products, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting the way they're choosing to roll it out.
It's also interesting in the sense that, Apple has been resistant to gaming for very long time.
Other than making a crap ton of money off of it.
Well, in the App Store, yeah, but
they're not resistant to take the money.
But remember, Apple did not care about gaming for decades, literal decades, until the App Store took off and they realized that the money was in the games, not because originally the App Store, this was when Steve Jobs was still in charge of things. I know, I grew up there. I know multiple people who worked there at the time, and the whole thing about the App Store was like they wanted the App Store to be like a professional app locate. Like you wanted, like that was where business stuff was there, and like productivity and and when they realized like all the most half or more of the revenue is coming from games, like. They didn't like that, and they ended up having to embrace it because that's where the cash was. But like,
then they trotted out Miyamoto.
Apple jumping into something like this is what a shift, even from 10 years ago. Yeah, it's impressive.
But they said at the beginning of this presentation that literally, they make all their money on games, all of it. So it is a game subscription service. It's for paid games only. So a big question was, okay, well, wait, these games are free already. That's not going to be the case. The games on Apple Arcade are going to be games that you would have to pay for normally, not free-to-play stuff. So
you can see that they're more robust than some just your standard free-to-play App Store crap.
Yeah, you're not going to see ads or anything like that when you're using the service. At launch, they're saying there's going to be over 100 exclusive games. That seems crazy.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Holy cow.
We only highlighted about 6.
Right. But so you got 94 more to go, bro, and it launches in 5 months. I'm not so sure about that. It's coming out in fall of this year.
I'm more or less sure about the quality of the 96 remaining games.
I'm pretty concerned about the quality of the first 4. I don't know. I mean, they look okay. They just look like indie games, though.
Yeah.
No pricing announced yet, so they have not announced what the monthly price. I'm guessing $10. That's my guess.
The thing I don't get about I know, like I said before, how in Silicon Valley everything has to be the most revolutionary, amazing thing you've ever seen. It can't just be like, hey, this is cool. The video for this, if you haven't watched it with the sound, the video here where they're showing, not this part, but where they kind of run down all the developers and they do interviews with Sakaguchi and that woman who made the Van game and all that stuff. It's
fascinating. There's a Sonic game. That's a pretty big deal.
It's fascinating to me because they're talking about they constantly say stuff like this game wouldn't exist without Apple Arcade. There's no way this game. It's like, bullshit.
That's a bunch of crap.
Like all this looks like something that I could easily find in like the PAX indie booth somewhere, or like Devolver Digital would publish any of this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like the idea that maybe,
it's actually not edgy enough for Devolver.
Maybe not Sakaguchi's game where he's building literal physical dioramas and photographing them to put the. Why? Like I know it looks kind of cool, but it's like, is anyone gonna be? It's like that's not gonna help you. And he even says like, I'm scared because I'm worried about how many dioramas we have to make because of how big the game is. I'm like, well, whose fault is that? Did you know we have CG now?
Yeah.
Did you know we can do 3D environments?
He may not know that, actually.
Yeah, I don't know.
Any other notes? Royalties. So we were talking earlier about how developers will get paid for content, and it's based upon how long people play your games.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because like that means you're either looking at really long epic things, which seems to be what Sakaguchi's trying to make. Or like the I wish I could remember her name. I can't. But
Multiplayer stuff.
The woman who made the van thing.
Yeah.
Talks about how every time you play it, it'll be different. Every time you don't know who you're gonna. Which to me says it's gonna be like a procedural sort of. I lost the name of the game. The name of the genre. Roguelike.
Oh.
That kind of thing. The idea of that being it's a game you can basically play forever. So you want people.
Because every time you boot it up, it's different.
Yeah, every time you do it is different. I presume that's the idea is like it's something you can play over and over and over and over again. Because again, if you're a little indie game maker and you're making like a 3-hour narrative game, you're at a tremendous disadvantage in comparison to say Sakaguchi's game, which is maybe like a 50-hour RPG.
Or a multiplayer game that people play over and over and over
yeah.
again. I mean,
then you can see, and it's interesting. I thought it was interesting to see kind of the nope, that was in the PlayStation thing. Never mind.
It's all starting to blend together.
Like all these kind of cutesy little like things are just like I don't know.
No, I completely understand.
But again, this has more interest and appeal to me than Stadia because here's a bunch of shit I can't play anywhere else, and apparently I can play it offline, which is means I can install it on local hardware, which is a big deal to me. So yeah, I mean, put this in the wait and see category. You'll see what the prices look like. But hey, Frogger.
There's a reboot of Frogger as one of the
if this can become kind of another sort of outlet for like weird indie shit, like I'm kind of on board with that.
Do we need another outlet for weird indie shit? Not really.
Not if you have a Switch, I guess.
Yeah.
Or Steam, but if it's exclusive to this. That matters.
It'd be hard for me to find a game on this service that
I am all in for Beyond a Steel Sky.
Yeah.
Because I love Beneath a Steel Sky, the first game. I love that game back in the day. They've got Dave Gibbons, the guy who did the artist for Watchmen. Like that looks real good to me. Like I would prefer not to play it on an iPad, but
I mean, the crazy thing is that the iPad is like 3 times more powerful than a Switch.
Right.
Like, I mean, the
iPad
I'm not
mops
talking
the
about
floor. Power. I'm not talking about power. I'm talking about controls.
Yeah.
I don't want to play shit on a touchscreen.
I'm assuming by now there have to be decent Bluetooth controllers. You would think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've never used one or bought one.
I'd probably have to buy a new tablet for this.
Yeah.
Because my existing iPad is like 5 years old.
Yeah, this one here is like 3 years old, I think. Mine's
an iPad Air 2, I think. So it's pretty old. Which all I really usually use it for is reading books and comic books.
Yeah.
I don't really play a lot on it, so it's fine. But like for something like this, I assume I would need. Maybe that's why the streaming element is there, so you can play on older devices.
I think Apple's ecosystem is the only chance that this has to be successful. The fact that so many people are already tied into all things Apple that they'll just stumble upon this stuff, but. Overall, I'm pretty disappointed in what I saw today. Like, I mean, it just looked like a bunch of indie games that they're like, "Hey, we'll give you an extra $100,000 if you make it for us." Like, I don't know.
I mean, that business
all the stuff Apple showed today, I thought this was the least impressive.
To be fair, that business model worked for PlayStation.
It did.
It's interesting that they got Sakaguchi.
Because he's not that recognizable. He's recognizable to us.
Yeah.
But that's not the people you're trying to reach with this.
No. But like, I guess you can kind of see where like if you put the guy's name up there big like that, this is a weird one where like it's using like swarming tech based on like how things actually swarm in like nature, and the close of it was like the guy said we're using like the same swarming algorithms and stuff that nature uses because we don't feel the need to introduce more chaos into the world. I'm like, I don't think if you made your own swarming algorithm, it would really affect the makeup of the chaos of reality, bro.
When developers take themselves too seriously,
a tad.
happens all the time.
There's a little bit of the old Polygon press reset trailer to this. Like there's a little especially like the developer in the van, like it looks like the van in the game traveling to the dilapidated diner
for no reason whatsoever.
I love the shot in there where they shoot her driving by from inside the abandoned diner. I'm just like
looking out the window.
Yeah. It's like I can imagine the moment when someone thought of that shot.
How about you get out?
You get out, we'll drive past, we'll shoot.
And we'll go back up, and then we'll drive. That's genius.
Yeah, it's like being back in film school again. But I'm interested. I'm always interested in something if it's something I can only play in one place. Because I'll give it a try.
We already have the hardware.
Yeah,
we have iPhones.
No reason not to. And I like Beneath the Steel Sky. Also available on GOG. If you like, it's an old point-and-click adventure, cyberpunk adventure game. So I'm into that. I'm not saying it's something I'm gonna like put on my calendar and count the days down to, but like, you give me content I can't get anywhere else, you're gonna probably get my attention. So,
do I think they're gonna make money on it? Absolutely.
Yeah,
do I think they deserve to make money on it? Nope.
Yeah, well,
That's pretty much my final take on Apple Arcade. They're gonna make money because people are already in there poking around, looking at other stuff. They're gonna stumble upon it, but I don't think there's anything related to Apple Arcade that's going to activate anyone to go and search through their phone and try to figure out where it is. I just don't.
I mean,
what do you think, Sam? You use your iPhone to game all the time? Meh. Sam says meh. There you go.
But as an Apple stockholder, yes.
Boston says meh, but if you own stock, you're in.
It's thumbs up. Yeah.
I mean, I'll pay attention to it whenever it comes along, but I feel it's gonna be one of those things where it's like, I find out like 3 days later that it went live like on Monday, and I'm like, oh, it did? Oh, it did? Okay, I'll go look now.
Overall, I'm very disappointed because if you think about knowing that they were working on something related to gaming and sort of what my expectations were and my hopes and dreams were, this fell way short. I mean, this is basically just like, we're gonna dedicate some money to some game development.
I wouldn't agree with that necessarily.
Really?
No, I think the fact that they are willing to move into games that look like actual video games and not like, slot machines or like
there always
time sync bullshit,
They just get lost in the shuffle usually.
I mean, yeah, but for every like whatever you want to call like a real game, what was it? I always think of
the sword one.
Well, yeah, I mean Infinity Blade.
Infinity Blade,
yeah. Or like I was thinking of the I can't remember that, it begins with an M. It's the one where it's like the perspective game where you have to kind of walk and move the stairs around. It's like a puzzle game.
I don't know.
Monolith. No, it's like
not ringing a bell. Maybe someone in chat.
Yeah, it's famous. It was like one of the darlings of the year. But it was like one of the. I paid like $9 for it. I finished it in like 3 hours. I'm like, that was great. I never loaded it up again because nothing else to do.
Yeah.
But like the fact that they want to do this thing and they want to move it into kind of like every game in that thing, while it is just sort of something I would expect to see at an indie booth at a convention or whatever. I still recognize them all as actual video games.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is more than I can say of all the clones of like the Match 3 crap and they want to pay Candy Crush style fees to move ahead in, or the latest permutation of that fighting game that every single license has, where you fight and you run out of energy, you got to pay to refill the energy or wait 4 hours to play again, or like shit like that. Like, those aren't real to me. Those are just like, those are treadmills to get you to keep spending microtransaction money. If you want to give me actual frickin' video games and everything, awesome. Like, are they going to be any good? Are they going to be things that like set my world on fire that I bring up in the game of the year discussion? Probably not.
Yeah.
But like, at least it's something.
I just think if you're gonna, and I'm assuming they're gonna charge $10 a month. But look, if they charge $1 a month or $2 or $3,
Monument Valley.
Yeah, that's it. If they charge $1 a month or $2 a month, sure. I highly doubt that's going to be the case. My guess is they also haven't announced pricing. My guess is it's going to be $10 a month, and there's no way I'm paying $10 a month to play indie games. I'm just not.
I'll pay $10 a month to play Beyond the Steel Sky. I don't know
for the first month.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd keep it beyond that.
Right.
So, we go see if it, Because I'm curious.
I guess that's the beauty of it. You could pay for 1 month and get through as many of them as you want, and then just drop it.
I mean, my curiosity on this is going to be basically, is this sort of a starting point, and you start to build to things that are bigger and more ambitious, or is this basically just you're going to keep it level and this is what it's going to be?
Yeah.
Because if you want to start slow and kind of, because Beyond a Steel Sky feels like, oh, that's a real adventure. That's a real thing. Mm-hmm. If you want to kind of build up until you're, maybe a year from now they're starting to put out stuff that maybe comes along. Is maybe not AAA stuff, but it is AA stuff. Maybe you're looking at stuff like AAA. Maybe you're looking at stuff like exclusives on Apple Arcade that's like maybe on par with like Vampire or something
possible.
like that. That could be a thing. That's a worthwhile platform to have around. Would I be subscribed to it every month? Not necessarily, but when something interesting comes out, I'd subscribe to it for that month and play that and then stop. Which sorry, but I mean,
it's crazy how many services there are. Or are gonna be on the market within the next year.
Yeah, it could be a lot more.
I mean, people are gonna get squeezed out. It's just inevitable.
You
can not gonna be able to support every platform.
You can only throw $10 a month at so many things.
Yep. Eventually, you run out of $10 bills. So, all right, let's move on. We're gonna talk next about Nintendo. Lots of indie discussion this episode.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about it again.
It just keeps fucking going, doesn't it? And even the Sony thing, really.
Really, you're right. Nintendo had a Direct. It was one of its Nindies presentations, which I think it's done every GDC since it started doing Directs.
Yeah.
It does one at PAX West every year, and then I think it does one at GDC.
Yeah.
I think the timing works out well enough.
Yeah, it's kind of like every 6 months.
It's staggered that way. What did you think of this one?
I didn't see much of it, actually.
Oh, okay.
I watched the stuff for Cadence of Hyrule because I'm interested in that because I like Crypt of the Necrodancer, and I like Zelda, so you put those two things together, and I'm interested.
Yeah, Cadence of Hyrule was easily the coolest thing that they announced. And they announced a ton. There's a ton of indies that they announced.
Yeah, so that was about all I noticed, really. Because the other thing was Cuphead, but I already have that on 2 different platforms, so I don't need to buy it again. What was the other thing? I just mentioned they ran the Stranger Thing. They ran more Stranger Things stuff, because they'd run that before. That's the first thing about Season 3 we ever saw was the trailer for that game months ago.
That was done for Season 2 as well. They showed a trailer of the video game before they showed really a trailer from the actual show. And the footage of the game actually spoiled a little bit of stuff that ended up happening in the show. I have a feeling this does the same thing. So, at the end of this the trailer's only 20 seconds long or whatever, but at the end it has this crazy spinning attack. Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling, because it's what it ends on, that has some pertinence to the actual TV show. Because the last time when they showed off the last game for the first time, absolutely there were hints about what was going to be.
Here they're in the mall that we saw in the.
That's right, in the trailer.
Because that's one of the big premises is they open a new mall in the town.
Well, they're also now they're tweens. They're not kids anymore.
They're 13, 14.
Yeah, they're starting to get to the point where they actually are attracted to each other and that kind of stuff. It should add some.
Well, that was already in play.
Yeah, it was getting there. It was puppy love, though. But now they might actually consummate the relationship.
Okay, now we're in a whole weird new area. I don't need to see that. But I mean, Steve, sure, but I did like that at the end because Steve is the best character in the series, and where he's friends with all the kids, and the girl he's working with is how many children are you friends with? Exactly.
Yeah. That was 8 or 9.
Yeah, we fight monsters together. You know how it goes.
Okay, so you mentioned kind of everything. Let's talk a little bit more in depth about each of the things that was shown. Cadence of Hyrule, for those of you who don't know, it is a cross of Zelda and Crypt of the Necrodancer. And Crypt of the Necrodancer is a mashup of music and rhythm games and RPGs.
Roguelike, specifically.
Roguelites, yeah. So you move and attack to the beat of the music.
Yes.
And
everything else moves with you.
Right. Yeah, and it's insane to play this game because it's this weird anticipatory trying to figure out what's the enemy going to do, which way am I going to go, and it all has to be to the beat of the music. It is one of the more unique games that's been released in the last half decade, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where you play it and you're like, how did no one else think of this?
All this time.
And at the same time, you're like, how did anyone think of this?
Yeah. It's really a genius game.
Yeah.
And to see the sequel with Zelda slathered all over it, I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah, it makes a frightening amount of sense, and at the same time, it would never have occurred to me.
Yep, and it's coming in the spring. It also, one of the coolest things about it is it has chiptune remixes of like 30 Zelda songs or something like that.
They know how to snag the Nintendo fans.
But what's most interesting about this, and a trend lately, is Nintendo losing its grip on its IP. It is letting other little small indie developers do crazy stuff with its IP. It's freaking awesome. What is this Nintendo that we're dealing with in 2019? It's
It's a Nintendo that's had good experiences licensing out their IPs to, the right people. I mean, I think Ubisoft has been integral in loosening them up in that regard.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Ubisoft has never let them down.
Yep. This indie stuff, though, I'd be nervous. It's like these little studios, man, like...
Somewhat, but also I think if you're Nintendo at this point, you're realizing that the other side of your bread is buttered by indie stuff. Like
Absolutely.
That's where they're filling the holes in their schedule with.
Yep.
And I'm sure they take meetings with a lot of these people. And if Nintendo knows when some these people Nintendo seem to really know when someone gets what they're after, and they must have had a really good interaction with the Crypt of the Necrodancer guys and guys and girls, and decided like, hey, these guys could do this.
Old Nintendo would worry that some rogue developer would hide something in the game, I'm not making this stuff up. Like, this is legitimate things that Nintendo has stated it was concerned about in the past. And I don't know if it's just the total changing of the guard with the Wada gone and Yamauchi gone.
I think the lack of Yamauchi helps a lot.
Yep.
It's also sort of the thing where, indie. You also notice how many indie devs are talking about how well things sell on the Switch, and how it's like. And so it's very much in these indie devs' interest to not piss Nintendo off.
No, absolutely, yeah.
You're going to play ball with Nintendo, however you need to play ball.
I think Nintendo's doing a great job.
So I think
it's
really smart.
Yep.
It's how it should be. And I've said before, I hope they give the next Star Fox to the Starlink team.
Yep.
I think they.
Hopefully they already did, and they're already working on it.
And that's also a solution to kind of the gaps in their schedule. It's smart. Like it's not a full-fledged Zelda game, but you got some Zelda content out of nowhere
Zelda-ish.
in the spring you didn't expect, and it's great.
It's
more,
awesome.
Do it more.
Yep. So as you said, Cuphead on Switch. Again, a major coup. Here we have Microsoft and Nintendo teaming up.
Coophead, you might say.
Yeah. We had heard rumors about this. I think we talked about it either 2 episodes ago or last episode. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was recently.
Yeah, but we brought it up that there were rumors swirling that Cuphead was going to end up on Switch. And obviously, as you know, this was a Microsoft exclusive that Microsoft subsidized the development for. And it is 100% okay about a year later allowing that onto Switch.
Microsoft and Nintendo seem to be in quite the bromance here.
It is strange.
What do you think the odds are of Master Chief showing up in Smash?
I think that's pretty slim. I think that's still pretty slim. Cuphead, I think, could end up in
Cuphead
Smash,
could happen. Yeah,
which I think would be awesome.
The developers have already said they'd like to do it.
Oh, right, that's right. I did read that quote, and it could happen. It could absolutely
it would
happen.
Fit. It would make sense.
They would fit. They would be. I think they'd be
pretty
great
cool.
playable.
It would be pretty cool if Master Chief got in.
Yeah, it would. I don't see that happening though. I think that's a step too far.
I don't know. I think if you want to make Halo hip again, that's sort of step one. I wouldn't count that out. I really wouldn't.
Look, I never would have guessed Cuphead would be coming out for Switch.
Well, also because it's one of the things that I think is weird when people talk about constantly like this character in this in Switch, or not Switch, Smash, this in Smash, this in Smash, and you see like I saw a thread last week where people were talking about like Fate Stay Night, that series, Yeah. Which character from that should be in Smash? I'm like, none of them.
None of them.
Because Smash Brothers is supposed to be a celebration of sort of like the greatest of video games.
Yeah,
like Fate Stay Night has not earned its place next to Solid Snake and Pac-Man. But Master Chief? Yeah.
He's worthy of the
look,
roster.
At this point, it feels like you're not really. It doesn't have. It used to be like kind of the greatest of Nintendo and like. I feel like it's, Pac-Man made sense because Pac-Man had a lot of good games on Nintendo systems. Metal Gear Solid makes sense because Metal Gear started on Nintendo.
Yeah, that was a stretch.
It's a throwback, but it's still there. Sonic made sense because that was the big rivalry, and now they were kind of together. But now it's just sort of like, whatever.
Like, if it seems like it might be
Is it a video game? Come on in. Come on in. But it's like, it kind of keep that sort of trend of like, it's almost like a museum of like the greatest things in the medium. And I feel like Master Chief and that team would. If Master Chief can be in Dead or Alive, he can be in Smash Brothers.
I do wonder how
He was. I know that wasn't the Master Chief. That was what's her name? Sarah. I think, or something like
Whatever.
That. But it was still a Spartan.
It's a Spartan, yeah.
If you got to make it a generic Spartan,
95% of the people who looked at that would be like, "That's Master Chief." So only people who are crazy Halo fans would pick up on the armor differences or whatever.
Well, also it had a girl's voice. So
yeah,
it was
that helps.
Like, oh, Master Chief sounds different.
How far do you think that this bromance is going to go between Nintendo and Microsoft?
I don't know. Well, we'll see.
It seems like they've kind of teamed up against the evil empire that is Sony.
A little bit. I mean, also because I really don't think they see each other as competition. They're after very different markets, and I don't think at this point, if you're Microsoft in particular, I don't think you're going to look at the Switch and think of it as something that makes the Xbox irrelevant.
No, definitely not.
And if the rumors about Xbox Live or whatever kind of coming in some sort of app form to the Switch are true, indeed it seems like Microsoft.
Well, I think it is. I think the Cuphead thing confirmed that Xbox Live.
Yeah, indeed, Microsoft seems to look at the Switch audience as maybe people who would never buy an Xbox.
Value adds, yeah.
But someone you can still present that content to, that's still a
And I
valuable
also
thing.
think Nintendo fully realizes that very few people only buy a Nintendo console.
Right.
I think Nintendo realizes, most of the people who own Switch also own either a PS4 or an Xbox One. Why would we turn those people away? We should court those people.
Yeah, so it almost feels like the team up here is sort of admitting, look, we're not going to prevent people from buying a PS5.
Yeah.
People are going to want to play God of War 2. People are going to want to play whatever other exclusives pop up from Sony because they're going to want to play Spider-Man 2, for God's sake. Why wouldn't you want to play Spider-Man 2? So you kind of form this coalition on the other side of hey, you don't only want to play PlayStation stuff. You've got all this other stuff over here, and one way or the other, whether they go for the Switch, whether they go for the Xbox, whether whatever in between, Microsoft and Nintendo sort of have them in their ecosystem.
Yep.
They can push content to them. They can show them their own thing. They can team up and so it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense against sort of this monolithic Sony situation, especially when Sony is refusing to play ball on even things as simple as crossplay.
Yeah.
And there's also that sort of thing where no one really likes Sony. No one really likes having to work with Sony. It's just sort of you end up having to do it because they're so big.
Yeah.
And I think you're just sort of the fan base pop you got from when Microsoft and Nintendo's European Twitter accounts started poking Sony for not letting crossplay happen.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good response to that. And
Yeah, for sure.
They can only help each other at this point. So I think it makes a lot of sense because they're after such different things.
Those two in particular, I think, are the two.
Would it make sense for Sony and Nintendo to team up? Not really.
No, it doesn't.
Not in the same way.
Because Sony has a much bigger presence in Japan.
Yeah.
That makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
So.
And I think they can help each other in that sensibility, too. Microsoft has trouble making any kind of inroads in Japan. Mm-hmm. And Nintendo can kind of maybe lean on Microsoft a little bit in terms of appealing to the Western audience or
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if they do any more collaboration.
Microsoft is sort of the home of the dude bro, or has been in the past. So, if Nintendo wants to be how do we do something that's a little more Gears of War-y? And you can be oh, we can talk about that. Nintendo.
Or if Nintendo's characters start appearing in Microsoft. It'll be interesting to see how far this goes.
That would be a hard. I don't think. Marcus Phoenix wearing Mario's hat at some point is probably not a thing I expect to see.
Think about this. Do you think Nintendo, if Microsoft had a handheld, you think Nintendo would ever let one of its games appear on Microsoft's platform?
Beyond maybe
a whole game,
some
Cuphead.
real old thing. Probably not. Nintendo doesn't need that though. Microsoft's the one in last place right now. They're the ones who need to kind of have the support. On the flip side, would it shock me if they make a new Fable game and the Master Sword is in there somewhere? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not impossible.
It's really not, actually.
Like a green tunic or something.
Yeah.
If you have Samus.
Link's been in Monster Hunter and
you can have Samus armor in Skyrim.
You could have Samus armor in Halo.
Yeah.
Honestly, multiplayer or whatever you can.
Man, that would be the matchup in it was Samus versus Master Chief.
It would be awesome.
Yeah.
And then the last game.
You could even do that as sort of if they're doing the Halo Infinite as a service. You can even have it be limited time stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Like Witcher and
special
Monster
events.
World and stuff.
Yeah. You could do some.
It'd make
cool
a lot
stuff.
of sense.
Yep.
And it would bring a lot of eyeballs to Microsoft's system that wouldn't necessarily look at it in any other situation.
Yep. The last game we're going to talk about from Nintendo's Indie presentation, although there were a lot more, you can find the whole thing on SIFTD, is Rad, which is a new game from Double Fine.
Double Fine!
It is an isometric, beat-em-up, roguelite, post-apocalyptic...
Those guys just do whatever the hell they want, don't they?
Pretty much.
Double Fine is great.
Yeah. This game does not look great, though. So characters can mutate. That's sort of rad for radioactive. The characters, like one of the characters looks like Gex. Remember that old video game character?
I remember Gex, yeah.
Like one of the characters' head kind of mutates into like a gecko.
What happened to Dana Gould anyway?
That's a good question. This game does not look good to me. It looks the art style is very weird. It looks like it could be fun. So it looks like it has some pretty unique mechanics to it, but I don't know. I feel like Double Fine's kind of slipping a little bit, to be honest.
Nah, it's all waiting for Psychonauts 2.
I guess. I mean, I used to be excited for everything that it put its name on. There's the gecko that can stretch his head. It's just a weird-looking game. Like I feel like the last few Double Fine games have not been games I was particularly interested in.
It's a fun little thing. It's it's not their next major release or anything.
I mean, the thing is they don't really have major releases anymore.
Psychonauts 2 is going to be a major release.
Yeah, but I mean, when was the last one?
I don't know.
See?
Broken Age,
That's
sort of.
I guess that's still kind of an indie game. And
It was an indie game, but it was sort of like the pioneer of Kickstarting.
Yeah.
So I get
crowdfunding.
It's certainly their most visible thing.
Yeah, I mean, it put them back on the map. All the stuff that came with
What
that.
was the last thing they put out?
Headlander.
That's right. Yeah.
Is that the last one?
Maybe it's the last one I remember.
And that game wasn't great. I got it. I played it for like an hour and a half, and I was like, eh.
Sometimes the quirk outweighs the good in their games.
Yeah, I feel like that's been the case for a lot of their recent releases.
Somewhat. I mean, I would say that was also part of the problem with Brutal Legend, but
yeah.
I know everybody sort of thought that was going to be a God of War game, and it turned out to be an RTS.
Yeah, it's very
was like,
weird.
Oh, what's that?
Like they didn't really market it beforehand. Like we had that. There was that one event that was like the week before it came out. And we all went. We were like, "What? This is what the game is?" Like I thought it was like God of War with like a heavy metal dude that beat people up with his flying V guitar. Like I remember that. I was like, "Oh, this isn't gonna go over well," and it didn't. Mm-hmm. It did not sell well. So
also, it doesn't have a middle act.
Yeah.
Like it just sort of jumps to the end after you play like 3 matches. It's very weird.
And that could have been budget. Game's not going to come out if we keep tweaking it, blah, blah, blah. Especially when you talk about a smaller studio like that, it could be
but to me, Brutal Legend should have been like a Darksiders game.
Yeah, for sure.
Like the world was so interesting, and I didn't want to.
The game wasn't
the game.
interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's like you hired Jack Black for that too. It's like the premise is great and the music is great and everything was great, except I didn't like playing it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the most important
part. It's a key element. Key element of a video game.
It is. Do you think Nintendo should keep doing these Nindies directs?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I mean, it's so important to how the Switch ecosystem kind of perpetuates itself right now and keeps people interested.
It felt kind of redundant with GDC happening.
Yeah, but like, I think you always have to keep in mind that the Nintendo audience is also a little bit self-contained.
No, you're right. They're a little detached from other folks that are in the game.
So you still got to get that message to them, and
That's true.
It makes sense to still do it as a direct.
Yep. I'm sure they're going to keep
the
doing
September one makes a lot more sense just in terms of, your
timing
and sort of you're right before the holiday season. It's been a couple months since E3. It's sort of like this dead zone. It's right about the time you want to hear some new stuff.
Yeah.
Until you kind of go through the holiday season, and then you get to the Game Awards, and you're like, now it's time for more new stuff. It's a good place for it.
That's true.
This one I get like it's kind of redundant with GDC, especially because GDC does tend to focus on
indies,
indie stuff more often. But I think Nintendo's audience is maybe insular enough that it still makes sense to do that.
All right. Time to move on. We're going to talk next about From Software's next game, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. I still don't know what the correct way is to say it.
Sekiro.
All
Yeah.
right.
I mean, you don't have to do the accent every time. I say Sekiro.
When I am in Japan, it's always tough for me to, should I speak the way I think I'm supposed to speak, or should I just speak Japanese like American dude?
I don't know. Well, I remember the first time we were there and we were trying to order beer. Well, beer. Trying to order beer, Kirin beer, can we beer? And like, we don't know. And finally, I think our boss was like, Kirin biru? And
It's
they're
just
like, oh,
beer.
beer and beer. Like,
No, that's
like,
Japan.
Yeah, and
you
like,
can say
so-
beer,
and, like, we
they'll
did-
be like clueless.
And we didn't want to like do the
And
accent.
then you say beeroo,
'cause
and
that's
they're
how you
like, oh,
pronounce
I
it.
get it. Like,
That's just how they pronounce it. But it's like we didn't want to do that because we didn't want to seem like racist or
Right,
whatever.
right,
but like
yeah.
at a certain point, you just have to pronounce it the way you pronounce it. I mean, that's literally if you spell it out romanized, it's BIRU. Like
I
that's
have a
literally
funny.
the word.
Here's a funny story, and I feel a little bit bad, but we're all friends. I feel okay sharing the story. So we were staying at the Park Hyatt, which is the hotel where Lost in Translation was filmed or whatever. We would always stay there when we went there. And I had gone to Harajuku to do some shopping. It was like the one day off that we had while we were there. And I get into a cab, and like before I would leave the hotel, I'd always take like a business card from the hotel and hand it to
standard.
them because it's easier than trying to tell them. Well, it was in English, and this guy couldn't read English at all. And so I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, the Park Hyatt is literally like probably one of the top 5 most famous hotels in the world. Like one time I stayed there, and I rode the elevator down with like Radiohead. Like that's how big that hotel is. And I'm trying to get him to take me to the Park Hyatt. I'm like, Park Hyatt. And he just sat there and couldn't understand anything I was saying. And he like pushed the button that opened the door. You know how like they have automatic doors in the cab. He pushed the button and the door next to me swings open. He's basically saying
like, "Get out."
get the hell out of my cab. And I said to him, I go, Park Hyatt. And he goes, hi. And he drove me right to the Park Hyatt.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre. I felt terrible. I'm like, I feel like I'm imitating how Japanese people would say it, and I'm probably not even doing that right, but it actually
close
worked
enough.
that it got me to the hotel. Very strange story. Anyway, it's time to move on. We're going to talk next about Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. From Software's next game. I did a live stream of it on Saturday. You guys made fun of me for 2 hours. Thank you very much. That was fun. I did play it more after the stream, which I'm guessing a lot of you may be surprised to hear that I went back and played more of it. Matt, however, has played a ton of it. Matt also, for those of you who may not know, Matt is basically an expert on From Software's games. He plays them all.
No, I'm not.
Well, relatively speaking.
Of the two of us, yes.
Yes.
But like, I'm not.
There are crazy From Software fanboys that go several steps beyond.
I do not know the deep lore. I do not know the min-max stuff. I don't know what the hell I'm doing most of the time. I just survive it, and that's good enough for me.
You've played them all.
Yeah.
So we'll start there. Matt, since you do know their prior games far better than I do, why don't you kind of give us a summary on what the big changes are?
Well, the main change is that it's not a Souls game. It is a lot of the same philosophy, and it has, I think the level design, you recognize it for the most part. Like, you recognize that the environments are made by the same people that made Dark Souls.
Yep.
It uses the same sort of bonfire checkpoint idea that also includes, you rest and the enemies that you killed respawn. You can fast travel between them. That's also where you do your upgrading. Like, that's all the same. Similar control scheme in the sense of, like, you're using the shoulder buttons as attack and defense. But it is a more action-driven combat system. It is someone on you're not just you're only one attack button. There's no hard and light attack. It's all one swing button, and then you have the R1 is attack, R2 is your prosthetic arm special ability, whatever you have equipped at the time. L1 is defend, and L2 is grappling hook, which all works very well.
Maybe we should set up the story as to why you have that arm.
Oh, well, early on you're trying to escape from, you're a shinobi serving a lord, and the lord happens to be like a 12-year-old boy, and you're trying to escape from where they've been invaded or whatever, and you find the kid holed up in this tower, and you try to escape with him, and you run into the general or some very, very important samurai who you can tell he's very hard to kill because he's big and has a big robe. And his hat is huge. And you also meet him in this beautiful field of kind of flowers and reeds.
That scene is
and
amazing.
that's how you know something important is going to happen in a samurai story.
You see white flowers.
The more beautiful yes, because the blood will show up on the flowers. That's why it happens there. And you fight him, and it's one of those boss fights where you're supposed to lose. Although apparently there are people who can win. They're good enough that they can win. But even if you do, I think you still get the cutscene where you lose. And he cuts Wolf's arm off, his left arm, and takes.
Can you win that fight?
Yeah, I just said you can win the fight. There's people who can win the fight gameplay wise, but at the end of it, I think you still lose.
Okay. You kind of have to. I mean, setups the whole game.
Yeah,
Sets up the whole
and then
game.
you, or at least there's people. So I played it. I got a PlayStation 4 copy a couple days early, and played it on that. And then when I got to, I think the Chained Ogre mini boss. It took me about 3 hours, and then the PC version on Steam went live. I'd pre-ordered that. That went live. That was supposed to go live like early, like morning of Friday, and it went live like early evening on Thursday, unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And I only knew because I saw a tweet about it. I think from Wario64 or somebody.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What?" And I ran to the other room, and I'm like, "There it is." I'm gonna go. So I started over on the PC version on full 60 frames a second because the PlayStation 4 Pro is playable, but it's still very wavers between 40 and 60.
Yeah.
And so I played it, started over on a PC. I got to the same point that had taken 3 hours to get to on the PS4. It took me 80 minutes.
Yeah.
Because
that's how these
skill
games
matters.
Work.
Like
That's how
it really
these games
matters.
Work. Yeah.
Knowing what you're walking into and knowing how to deal with it is the whole
It is.
game.
Yeah.
So he gets killed, and the kid gets taken, or he gets his arm cut off, and the kid gets taken away, and then he wakes up in this weird temple with this like sculptor who has made this prosthetic shinobi arm that looks like it's made out of like ceramic hand with like bone wrists.
It looks like the bones are still there.
Yeah. Well,
what are those bones called? The ulna and
and the radia.
Yeah.
But they're not his. They're
right. Yeah.
part of the thing
gone.
the guy made.
Yeah.
And for some reason he can move it, and it's sort of magic. And the main trick of it has a grappling hook in it. He can shoot it out and grab things and pull up just like the grappling hook in Tenchu.
Yeah.
Except it works way better because the aiming is very intuitive and you can just hit the button and do it, whereas in Tenchu you sort of had to click in and aim the thing and hit the right thing and hope it connected. And this is very much
much more user friendly.
It's very fire and forget. Like you can really
it's going to latch when it.
And then eventually you can find prosthetic attachments that let you throw, shoot shuriken or like fire. It turns into like a flame blast or a giant axe that cuts through shields. It goes on and on. There's a whole bunch, and there's a whole separate tree. You can upgrade everything. I mean, the upgrades in this game go way deep.
But it's not an RPG.
It is not. It is an action game.
Yeah. There's not builds, and you're not going to be fiddling around with your armor and all this other stuff, trying to
you can
maximize your...
you can choose what abilities to upgrade for each in various trees and stuff. So there is some of that, but the way that works is very different from Dark Souls, where Dark Souls was about you collected the souls, you go back to a bonfire, you use the souls, spend the souls to level up, which basically means you up one stat at a time each time you level up. And that has an influence on the damage you do or the speed or the health or whatever. This game, all the upgrades like that are outside of the abilities. The upgrades are very much tied to specific items you get from beating hard enemies.
Yeah.
So, and here's where I say, I don't think this is controversial, but I would say that this game is harder than any of the Souls games.
I don't think it is controversial. I think everyone said that.
Because in a Souls game, if you're stuck on something, you can just sort of kill things over and over, build up the souls, go back to the bonfire, level up slowly. Maybe it'll take you a long time, but eventually you'll do way more damage to that boss you're stuck on or whatever you're stuck on. But Sekiro doesn't work that way because most of the upgrades come from those bosses you're stuck on, so you literally just have to get better and handle them properly.
Without getting
without help,
abilities
without any help, yeah. And sometimes you'll sneak around and you'll hear like eavesdrop on conversations, and you'll find out that like, oh, this thing is weak to fire or whatever. So and then you'll find like the fire upgrade for your prosthetic arm, and you know that okay, it's like the one mini boss that they said is weak to fire. The fire weapon doesn't actually do much damage to him, but it automatically staggers him. He's automatically puts him on his heels. It's like a get out of jail free card if you find yourself
staggering
in the wrong
in this
place.
game is everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what your objective is, to stagger enemies and then finish them. That's pretty much how it works.
So I wish I could remember who said this on Twitter. I read it like the day before it came out. Some journal, I can't remember who it was, but basically he said the combat system in Sekiro is like they made a combat system out of trying to open a jar of pickles. And that's a great way to describe that. I wish I remembered who said that so I could give him credit for it. But the combat in the game is very based around clashing. It is not sort of like that sort of the give and take of the Dark Souls games were more like dodge hit or parry hit.
Yeah.
The parrying was kind of more expert in Dark Souls, but there was a lot of like, find that advantage and kill them before they can do anything about it. And there is a stealth kill mechanic in this game that you need to use as much as you can because multiple enemies can overwhelm you very quickly. But if you're fighting one-on-one, your basic thing is just hammering at most enemies is not going to get you anywhere. They're going to block, and eventually you're going to run out of posture, and they're going to be able to come back at you and interrupt your attacks. So you need to use the L1 defense, and when they attack you, if you hold L1, you will block their attack, and if you can keep blocking their attacks, but eventually your posture will run out, and you'll get your guard broken more or less. That's not a big problem most of the time that I've found, as long as you're being smart about when you go on and off the guard. What you want to do is, like so many action games, if you hit the defense button right as the strike hits you, you will deflect it as a parry. And some enemies are weak enough that gets you an instant opening to do a death blow.
Most of the rank and file enemies.
Yeah, basic enemies tend to like one or two, but the deflection, like the thing is, like it doesn't automatically get you a death blow. It just does a lot of damage to their posture, and once their posture is broken, that's when you get the death blow.
Right.
So that's what you're after. So basically, against a strong enemy, the combat, you're sort of standing toe-to-toe, hit, clash, defense, clash, deflect, hit, back, clash. I mean, it's the flow back and forth is constant and fast and fucking awesome. Like I love the combat system in this game. It is. I complained a little bit during Devil May Cry 5 about how I missed kind of Devil May Cry 3's emphasis on the defense and the counters and that one particular pose or fighting style I can use, and how some of it came down to like 2-frame counters and deflections. There's nothing more satisfying to me in an action game than getting a solid counter off of a perfect parry. And this game does this
feels good
constantly. And
it's the whole game.
It's the whole thing. And and it's great. It's so good. And it teaches you something. Every single enemy type teaches you something new about the combat system. They keep layering more and more ideas and more quirks and more elements on top of it as you move, and like you sort of have to absorb that, and all those things that you learn from those enemies in the run up to the next mini boss, you're going to need to know that. And they start adding like things that can't be blocked or things that have to be countered in very specific ways. Like when you see the red kanji pop up,
that means you can't.
That means you can't like just block normally. It means it's going to be one of 3 attacks. It's going to be either a grab, which you have to dodge with the circle button. It's going to be
a sweep. You have to
jump over, and then the thing that they don't really teach you unless you do the training with the guy near the temple is then you hit X again and you do like a dive kick, and that does massive posture damage. So the count, it's worth learning the count. And then there's a thrust, which you can't just hold to block. You have to count. You have to deflect or get stabbed, and then you can learn another move with the abilities. That lets you instead of doing the defense move, you hit the dodge button without moving the stick at the right time at the last second, and you will step on the spear, grind into the ground, and get an instant death blow on most regular enemies.
That's probably the most satisfying one.
That's a great move.
Stepping
really
on the sword.
Move. Yeah. And so, but when we say abilities, by the way, that ties into kind of another Dark Souls parallel. It's a little different. Is when you die, the premise of the game with the boy you're trying to save, the Lord. He has like special royal blood or something that allows you to do the resurrection thing. So if you die once, you can resurrect on the spot. And then you can rebuild that resurrection ability by killing more enemies.
Yep.
You have to fill that bar back up. Or if you go back and rest, obviously you reset the enemies again. But if you rest, you get the default 1 resurrection back. And you can fill the resurrection like enemy bar up full and keep it there. But if you die once, you lose the ability to resurrect for a while, and you have to kill a couple enemies before you can get that enemy bar resurrection available. And the reason that's there is so you don't get an extra free life when you fight a boss.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that when you're fighting a boss, that's impossible.
Right, exactly.
You'll never
that's
get
the
that
entire
extra
reason
one.
that is there.
Unless the boss has multiple health bars.
Right.
Because if you take off the first bar, you get another resurrection.
Yeah, you can unlock that resurrection by doing that sometimes. Or if they have like minions.
Yeah.
That's also possible. But if you're fighting minions and a boss, you're probably screwed.
You're screwed pretty much.
So if you die, so if you run out of resurrections and you die for real, you go back to the latest. It's not a bonfire; they're the sculptor's idols.
Yeah.
But you lose
that's really
half
what they
your
are.
money, and you lose.
Not always though.
No, but that's a different mechanic. You lose half your money, and you lose half the experience you've built up to the next ability point.
Yeah.
And ability points are what you use to get abilities. Abilities are subtle things that can be kind of game changers. I have one, there's one that like lets you get health back when you do a death blow, which is like
Definitely
big
pick that
deal.
one.
There's ones that make healing items do more damage. There's ones that give you special special moves that like, there's a spin move that can help get guys off you. There's a move that like if you can attack in midair when you're doing a grappling hook thing, which seems like kind of stupid. It seems like pointless because like, okay, why do I want to attack when I'm jumping on a roof or a branch? But eventually you run into enemies that if you stagger them right or they're in the right position, you can grapple to a point on them and pull yourself to them. And when you do that, being able to hit them in midair twice and then like kind of rush past them, that's a great move.
Yeah.
So everything has its use. And so the balance on the resurrection versus the dying, as opposed to like, because you can't go back to where you died and pick your stuff up again, like in Dark Souls. If you lose that stuff, it's gone.
Yeah.
And like you said, there is a mechanic where you can escape that, where like some unseen deity spares you the penalty, but you have there's a percentage of, I think you start with 30% of chance of that happening. But as you die more, something called the dragon rot sets in, and you get these dragon rot items, and it also infects other NPCs in the game, but it lowers the percentage. So right now, I think my percentage of getting untouched by death is 13%. And there's a quest you can do later that I'm in the middle of right now, where you're supposed to like you cure some of the NPCs, and it takes away those items from your inventory and it ups your percentage back.
Oh, interesting.
So there is a way to do that, but I think there's a limited number of items that do that. So the idea is basically don't die too much, but you're going to die a lot. But it's okay.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're absolutely going to die a lot in this game.
So I think it's hard. I think it's harder both in the sense that it doesn't give you a break on being able to level up and be more powerful when you fight enemies you're having a problem with. And it's also harder in the sense that I think the death penalties are harsher.
You think so?
Well, in the sense that you can never get your stuff back.
Right.
You can't just keep throwing yourself against stuff and go, I'll just go back and pick up my souls again. Like, that money's gone. I mean, it's not hard to make more money.
But being able to resurrect is huge.
Right. But like,
I mean, that's a big deal.
You can only do that once, or you could also just look at it as like, well, what if you just say the double life bar? Like, that's just sort of a standard thing.
Yeah.
And then the risk reward of, because most of the time what happens if I die once, I resurrect and I fight my way out of the situation, and I will just run back and rest and try again, because I don't want to die again and lose my.
Oh, I usually don't even resurrect. I usually just respawn.
That's crazy, because you're automatically losing your money and your XP that way.
I'm wasting my time. Like if I'm fighting like a boss or whatever.
Well, just resurrect and run back to the idol, and you get to keep your shit.
Is it better to do that?
Yeah, because you don't lose half your money.
I didn't even know that.
You only lose your half your money and half your XP if you die. Period. And I have to respawn at the idol. If you resurrect and then run back to the idol, you don't lose anything.
That brings me to a criticism I have with the game, is that you got to figure out a lot of crap on the fly.
Well, it does actually tell you that in a text thing. There's some stuff that it does tell you that like you didn't hear, I think, because you turned the subtitles off.
Yeah, for the stream. And I didn't turn them back on when I started playing the next day.
No, you need the subtitles. You need the subtitles in part because one of the hallmarks of From games is the characters tell you important things sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. And the other thing is that the subtitles in this game are great because you can just read them and skip line by line by line, and you have to listen to what they say. You can just read at your own pace. Whereas if you're listening to them with no subtitles, you're sort of stuck at the pace they're speaking in English,
I think this game is designed to be easier. I agree that the actual combat, the one-on-one confrontations are difficult and more challenging. But between the way the save system works, it just seems like the save points are far more frequent. It's not like you're going like 3 miles before you get to the next one. Like a lot of times in the Souls games, I would just start to feel hopeless. I'm like, dude, I just barely scraped by killing this guy. I can't see a save point. I can see like 7 enemies at least between me and the save point, and it would just be very discouraging.
They are pretty generous with the.
They're much closer together.
But again,
to me, what
they don't do you as much good as they do in Dark Souls.
The other thing that I think makes it easier, and you really opened my eyes to this even more whenever I came over and was watching you play, and I figured it out yesterday, is the instant kills, the drop kills. Like when I was playing on the stream, and literally I had not played a second of the game. Like I booted it up and played for the first time ever on the stream in front of everybody. And then the next day I started thinking about the game more and playing it more, and I started to realize, one, that I should be using like the grapple hook way more often. Like I wasn't using it hardly at all. But two, like once you start using the grapple hook, you can just get up high and you just instant kills. Like, you just get above an enemy and it's just, you jump down and you hit attack while you're falling and it just instantly kills people. And then one thing you opened my eyes to, which I didn't even realize after playing it the next day, is that you could do that to like mini bosses.
Yeah.
Like I was having a problem with the Unchained Ogre that we were seeing before, and Matt's like, oh, you can just take one of his health bars just doing a stealth attack. And I was like, what? And he's like, yep. And he just climbed up and dropped down and took half his health with one attack.
Yeah,
and
because
again,
you can just run away until he forgets about you and then come back.
Yeah,
and sneak up
like
behind
I
him
didn't
and
even.
boom.
I had no idea you could do that.
So far, the only enemies you can't reset and come back and stealth one death blow from are like the actual main bosses, like the bosses that give you the memory thing,
right?
The big
upgrades.
The big fights.
Yeah.
Those seem to be so far. I mean, I've only done 2 of them. But so far, they seem to be, you end up in kind of an arena or sort of an area where you can't get out. Like, it's like you're either going to win or die here.
Yeah.
And so that seems to be how that works.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, but there usually is a way, if you're having trouble, you can at least find a way to kind of back off, come back, sneak up, and cheese them out of one life pip.
Yeah.
Before, and because look, especially early on with the Chained Ogre is one of the hardest things in the game so far. Even including like the actual big bosses.
That's crazy for me to hear.
In part because I tend to be bad at dodging grab moves, and he's all grab moves.
He is. That's what they teach you before you fight him.
Yeah. And but so yeah, if you can do that, you only have to get him down 1 health bar, and like I think that's pretty doable in most of those cases. Whereas I beat him again while you were here when I was kind of like showing you kind of how that works. I beat him again, and then I got to the next section, which has another mini boss where you have to like kind of pick off all the random trash mobs, basically, and you go down and fight this big samurai guy. And he took me like 3 or 4 tries when I fought him before. I beat him in 1 try and didn't even move. Like I just stood there, block, hit, block, hit, stab. Done.
That gets to another thing about this game, though. It's a little weird. Is there's a lot of time spent just standing there, waiting for the enemy to attack. Because if you just go in and try to hack, like I stood there and I'm like, okay, he's not going to attack, but then he blocks it. And then you're losing your posture. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times in this game, you literally are just standing there, or you're teasing, trying to get the enemy to attack, because you need him to attack so that you can counter and do your thing. Mm-hmm. And that to me is a little weird. Like during the stream, like I was dancing in circles trying to get the guys to attack, and they just stand there. The AI in this game is not great.
Well,
for enemies,
I don't agree with that at all. I
do agree.
It's
pattern recognition.
I do agree that the AI isn't great in terms of like stealth stuff, in the sense that like it's like, hey, did you notice like you were walking in a line of 4 people and now there's only 1 of you? Like, they don't get that. Like, and sometimes
someone was just
bodies,
murdered 3 feet away and you never saw it.
Sometimes, I mean, the one thing that that's why I learned to not use that drop down kill very often, because that is super loud. Everybody around them sees that. Whereas if you drop down behind them, he's very quiet. If you drop down behind him and just stab him, sometimes they don't even turn around and see.
Yeah.
But in terms of like, first off, yes, they are giving you a lot of time before they attack in the section you're playing in, because you're early.
Okay.
There are plenty of relentless motherfuckers who will not let you breathe.
Okay.
Moving on, but that you're basically still in the tutorial section there. Also, it's kind of part of the aesthetic of the samurai thing, where it's like you're supposed to stand there and size each other up, and then somebody moves and it's all over.
Right.
Like, it's that.
I mean, that's definitely the way this game is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, most fights aren't even really fights. It's just one stab and they're dead.
Yeah, it
is a lot of shuffling around each other, blocking, and then it's usually just one blow that kills 90% of the enemies.
I love it.
But the combat, I don't even... To me, the struggle I've had with a lot of these games is I don't know that it's skill, whether you're, quote, good or not good at these games. It's pattern memorization. It's being able to read a tell. Like the enemies will be like, some enemies will do hack, hack, low sweep, and you have to block, and then jump over the sweep. It's more about memorizing what each enemy type does and then reacting to it on the fly versus I have like razor sharp timing. Because the timing in these games...
I would argue it's both.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of both, for sure. But it really is, particularly with like the bosses and some of the tougher mini bosses, a lot of it is just memorizing. It's just pattern memorization, attack sequence memorization.
I don't agree with that. I think it's more knowing how the system works. And if you know how the system works, you can improvise when you need to, which is why I beat the first major boss with that on one try. Like, because I knew how all that... the previous section, the whole... And the game's very good about this so far, and I think Patrick Klepek has talked about this somewhat too. The whole section I'd played up to that first major boss had taught me everything I needed to know about how to beat that boss.
Yeah.
And all I needed to do, easy to say, but all I needed to do was put all that together in the right order when he did the things he was doing so I could counter what he was after, and I managed to do that. And it felt good. You know, it felt more rewarding to me than a lot of Dark Souls stuff did, because a lot of the way I got through a lot of Dark Souls stuff was partly pattern recognition and learning the bosses, but some of it was just like, I'm going to kill these other like random monsters in the area until I can level up to the point that instead of taking like 7 hits to kill him, it's going to take 3.
Right.
You know? And that's called cheesing, you know, frankly.
But I do a lot of that in this game, too. Like, I'll try, because one thing I learned on that first 2 hours I spent playing with the game is you can't really fight more than 2 guys at once. It's really,
not early
really,
on.
It's really, really
once
hard.
Once you learn how they work and what every move they do, how it is, I can fight like 4 or 5 at once.
Wow, I'd like to see that.
In like the early areas here, I can, like, if I usually it's because I did something stupid and I missed something, or I dropped down and I hit the button too early. Instead of like stabbing the guy to death, I accidentally hit him. And like suddenly 4 guys come at me, and I can usually get out of that nowadays. But nowadays, like 3 days later, now at this point. But like early on, yeah, that would have been instant death for me. Like
like if I get surrounded by 3 or 4 guys, I literally just intentionally die. Like I'm just like, there's not even a point in fighting. Because one thing I will say is I don't think the AI is great in this game. But at least they don't all stand around and wait for each other to take turns attacking.
They definitely don't do that.
And if 2 people attack you at once in this...
I don't know why there are giant roosters
I
in
don't
this
either.
game. Like, that
it's
is so weird.
But, like, I just don't think that... so when I play Ninja Gaiden and I watch enemies attack, it's like I don't memorize, like, their patterns of attacks. Like... there's a flow to it. They attack, I block, and then I know how long to wait to retaliate with a strike so that I know it's going to land. In this, as long as you know the pattern that the enemy is going to do, and you work within the posture system, you can land your attacks. It's more about knowing or memorizing what each enemy does and then reacting to it and doing what you're supposed to do to counter it.
How is that not skill?
There's skill required in memorizing.
You still have to execute though. Like that's what I mean. It's like even if
I don't find the execution challenging. Like it's more.
I watched that stream, dude.
No, but the challenge to me is knowing what the enemies are going to do and being able to anticipate it. It's not actually physically dodging out of the way in time. Like I don't have problems with that. It's like
I think the dodge in this game is hard.
I haven't had problems with it, really.
That's because you haven't played enough Dark Souls to be accustomed to how the invincibility frames work. Like, I've had to break my expectations of how dodge rolls work by playing this game. Because the dodging in this game is completely different. And that's, I think, one of the that actually has been a thing that's short-circuited a lot of Dark Souls players in this game, is like, the dodging is not the god move that it is in Dark Souls.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get caught sometimes. But what I found is
this fucker catches me all the time.
Well, yeah. This guy also doesn't have a pattern. Like, this guy will not, like, some of the enemies you can hack and you know that you're not going to get caught. But this guy, you can hack him once and he'll scoop you up and slam you.
Well,
Sometimes you get away hacking him 4 times before he does it. But I got to the point where I would just hack once and just roll away.
Look, all I'll say in response to kind of like what you're saying here, get further.
Okay.
Like, you're judging these guys on like imagine judging how the combat in Ninja Gaiden works off of the first level.
I mean, the enemies right from the beginning in Ninja Gaiden are pretty tough.
Yeah, well, they were pretty tough when you were first playing this game, too. But, like, imagine instead of being thrown into that first level with those two types of ninjas, we throw you right in with those demon dinosaur guys. Like, that's a totally different skill set.
Yeah.
And it short circuits a couple of the things you learn, and it teaches you a couple of new things. It's like yeah, if like the whole game was like what these early guys are like, that's true, but like it's not.
Okay.
Like it goes. I mean, just even after that first boss, and you wander into this first area, you're like, okay, I beat a boss. I got these upgrades. I got more health now. I got another gourd seed. I'm all okay. All right. Oh, look at these guys. I'm just gonna go. Oh no, it's all over. Like it's like you, and they trick you too, because the first guy you fight after that is just a normal dude. And you're like, oh, I got another normal dude. I'm cool. I'm gonna go in here. Da, da, da. Oh, these guys are like 3 feet tall. These are gonna. Oh no, they it's over.
Okay.
Like you're dead.
Interesting.
Like,
I don't know if I'll play any more of it. But
and I had to come back.
If I do, I'll have something to look forward to.
And I had to come back and approach that in a totally different manner,
Right,
obviously.
right.
And then it worked. But like the instant you think you understand everything there is to understand, you're going to be horribly mangled. And I mean that's also very true of Dark Souls.
Yeah.
But like this one, like just the combat system in this game is exactly what I like.
I like it way more than the
so-
combat in their other games because it's just faster. It's
Yeah.
more action oriented. You feel like you're engaged in something. Like
And just
I always felt like the Dark Souls games. It felt like I was playing them like underwater. It's like the roll would like roll. Like
They are it's a very methodical.
yeah, and this just feels like real life. It's like quick. It's like, man, when you roll, you frickin' roll. And when you jump back, you jump back. It's not like this kind of slow, more cumbersome combat. And so I agree. The combat, I think, is more challenging in this because I can't, for whatever reason, I'm having problems like doing pattern recognition with these guys. But I feel like the rest of the game offsets it because as somebody who's an outsider to this franchise and hasn't been a big fan of it, I feel like I'm resonating with this one a little more because the other parts of the game aren't as punishing. Again, I think the stealth kills change everything for me because you could never do that in the Dark Souls game. So
No, the backstabbing in Dark Souls is very limited.
it's way harder.
Yeah.
And it felt a little janky, to be honest with you. So I like that I can get up to the rooftops. I'm safe up there as long as there's no guy with a gun. And I can kind of troll around and kind of scope out the area and just drop down and just strategically kill people without any risk at all of getting killed or like losing everything or having to go back like 5 months. I mean,
And you can always run away.
Yeah, you
like,
can.
He's faster than almost everything else in the game.
And I love
so-
that too. Like, when I run away in like a Dark Souls game, you can hear on the surround
Yeah.
speakers their footsteps. Like, it scares you. You're like, oh my God, I can't run faster than this guy. In this, you can absolutely get away, even if you just want a breather. And I think that makes a huge difference. The bonfires or the idols or whatever, being closer together, that makes a huge difference to me, man. Like, it gets rid of the hopeless feeling that I get a lot of times playing these games. It's like, I just want a big battle, but I can't feel good about it because here's 8 more guys that I know I'm never going to kill, and I'm just going to die, and everything I got from that last battle is going to be gone. I'm going to have to go back to this bond and fight through all these guys again. Like, it's not completely gone in this, but it is quelled a good bit. Enough that I can see a difference personally. And again, I'm not that far into the game. Maybe that changes down the road, but based upon what I've played so far,
No, I would say that's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
I mean, it changes, and you have to evolve your strategy and understand even more about how the combat system works, and more importantly, how the combat system kind of interacts with the new things the new enemies can do. But it keeps that, and also like even killing the lowliest dude in this game feels good.
yeah.
Like there's a satisfaction to it.
Because it's always a killing blow.
Yeah.
You never just chip somebody down. You have to finish them. Like, that's just the way the
And
game
also,
is built.
those guys can always kill you.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
The lowly, that little like kind of starting soldier guy who you can bully into a death blow with like 3 hits from the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
If you stand back and do the wrong, they have that, because you complained about it on the stream a little bit. They have like a 10-hit string
Combo,
they
just
can
came
do.
out of nowhere,
They just can
yeah.
go, and you can block the whole
Oh, it's
thing.
like, holy crap, it just kept coming. Clang, clang, clang,
and
clang.
you can block the whole thing. It's no
Yeah.
problem. But like it puts you on the defensive.
Well, the first time it happens,
really
you're
hard.
never going to block
Right.
it. You'll never guess he's
Well,
going
and
to
the other
strike
thing, of
you
course,
8 times in a
is
row.
if you know the pattern of how it works, and when the hits come, you can let off the defense button and tap it again, and you can get the counter and death blow in the
Right.
middle of it.
Yeah.
Like that's the nuance of the combat system, and that flow back and forth, give and take, which I honestly don't think anyone else has ever nailed quite as well as this in this. And like you see, like sometimes games attempt it, like where like I think as bad as it was, Ninja Gaiden 3 was trying to do something similar with that. You know, that system where you
Yeah,
stuck the sword in the
hated
guy
that,
and like there was a clash with it and you stuck it in and you had to like pull it out and do that. Like I think they were going for something similar to the concept here, but this thing nails it and Ninja Gaiden just fell off a cliff.
Well, that game was bad.
No, I heard the Wii U version was better, but I never played it.
I wasn't going to give it another chance. No way.
No, that was kind of where I was on it too.
But I mean, I would.
I mean, it's going to take me a long time.
So the good thing is that you have somebody here who's not been a fan of From Software. And you have someone who is a fan of their games. And so you kind of get both positions on this.
Anyone with a hat that fancy, you're dead.
Yeah, you don't
like,
want to mess with that guy.
You. Like, it's just a basic life lesson.
Yeah. So if someone were to ask me, am I enjoying this more than other From Software games? Parts of it I do like more. Like
another box quote from Shane.
Yeah, like like I don't feel as hopeless while I'm playing this game as I did the Dark Souls games, but I like the aesthetics of Dark Souls and Bloodborne more.
Yeah, I do like the aesthetics of this game, but I do like
I like them too.
Nothing matches Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Bloodborne is in a class of its own. That's the first arm upgrade, by the way.
Oh, so I did get it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it. That's funny.
You got to go to the sculptor and have him.
Okay.
Have him make it for you.
Yeah. And again, there's so much stuff that's like just talking to you for the last couple hours about this game. There's so many things that I was doing that I didn't even know. I didn't even know I had that. Like you were talking about like some bell and like I was like, I didn't know. Like you're right. Like turning off the subtitles on this game can make it rough. Also because the voiceover in this game is mixed so low. Yeah, like even wearing headphones, like you got to really concentrate.
The voice mix on the Japanese language track is not all that low.
Oh, really?
I hadn't heard the English version until you turned it on the stream, and yeah, that sounded very quiet.
Yeah, it's hard to hear. So apparently I missed some stuff. I need to go into
you absolutely need to hear what people say in this game, but also just general From Software games is the rule of like you talk to somebody until they start repeating the same thing. Because sometimes you talk to people in these games, not as much in this one, but more in the Dark Souls games. But like you talk to them long enough, they'll sometimes give you stuff. And this game tries to teach you to talk to everybody multiple times early on when you first run into the boy. And the second time you talk to him, he gives you your healing item, the gourd. Like, so like, yes, you definitely want to talk to everybody.
Yeah. But it was like, you're right, though. You've got to talk to him multiple times sometimes,
and
which is out of the ordinary for most games.
It is, but it's like standard for From Software games where it's just like, you talk to the NPC until they start saying the same thing over and over again. So you know you've exhausted all the options.
Yep. So
yeah, part of that is just you're not immersed in that.
I don't know a lot of the unwritten rules of the stuff, and I think if you're someone like me, you're going to be lost on some stuff.
Yeah, the one thing
hopefully
I will say,
you have a friend like Matt who can
just pay attention to everything it tells you, everything they say, and also all the tutorials. Because there were a few times in the stream where like when you're like, how do I pick up the coins? And it's like the tutorial box told you 10 seconds ago, but it's so weird. The way they do it is so weird. Yes, the other funny thing is like when you first started, you were trying to do something involving. Oh, you're trying to pick up the letter, and you kept switching to the items suck because you would hold.
Yeah, if you hold square.
You hold square.
Right.
And it wasn't until you did that I realized that holding square doesn't pick the thing up. The trigger to pick a thing up is when you let square go.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize until you did that, because I didn't do that vacuum suck thing until it told me to later. I never picked up on that.
I did it immediately, but I'm like, what the hell is he doing? I didn't realize that it was like picking up like the coins and stuff.
Or like the
because there weren't any coins the first time I did it.
Like the airdrop attack.
Yeah.
I figured that out like in the first couple of enemies because I was up on the roof. Because as soon as you give me,
do they ever tell you how to do that?
Much later.
Yeah.
Like so as soon as I was up on the roof. Because you give me a grappling hook and I'm never going to be on the ground again, basically. Yeah. And so I'm up there and I'm like, I wonder if I can. I locked on. I'm like, I wonder if I can kill him like aerial. And so I dropped off, and as soon as the dot turned red, I'm like, button.
Tap. Yeah, I had one time where I didn't have a lot of area above the enemy. Like I was probably like 3 feet above him, and I guess there wasn't enough time to hit the button as you were falling, and I literally just flew through the floor down into the ground.
There are some interesting bugs in this one.
Yeah.
I've been hit through walls a fair number of times.
The camera also is
camera
giving me some
gets
problems.
caught on walls. I've been
Yeah.
caught in a corner a couple of times. I mean, you
Yeah.
could argue that I should be managing my space better to not end up in the corner.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just shit goes crazy. And
Yeah.
that's what but like it has more kind of bugs like that than I'm used to from the average From Software game. Because I mean, the hitboxes are great. But I've been, I'm like up against the wall waiting for some guy, and some guy just starts slashing his sword through the wall and hitting me. I'm like, okay, I don't expect that from a From game. I expect that from a lesser game.
Also, the enemies do something in this game that happens in a lot of games. In fact, it also happens in the Division 2. They always know where you are.
Yeah, they do.
It's like they can just see through every wall. It's like the gun guys, they'll shoot at you, and you run away, and then you go behind a wall, and they don't just keep shooting at the wall at the point where you disappeared.
No, they're shooting at you
They're
where you
shooting
are.
as you. They cannot see you, but they know where you are.
They will forget about you
eventually,
if you hide
yeah.
eventually.
That happens in the Division 2 as well. Like, they always know where you are, and they may not have seen you for 40 seconds, and one little piece of your head sticks out behind a box, and they shoot you in the freaking head. So it's not just this game. A lot of games do that for whatever reason, but... So I guess
you can get abilities that make you much harder to detect. So which makes a big difference. We're talking about stabbing a guy in plain sight from 20 yards out, and the difference between them turning yellow and not reacting at all.
That's a big difference.
The abilities are a big deal. I have done some grinding to get ability points to get the abilities I want that I know are going to fit my playstyle better. There's a lot of so there is. It's not like I was a little worried before I played it about because it's more of an action game versus an RPG. I was worried about not being able to customize the character the way I wanted to play, or I'd be stuck in. That's not. I haven't found that to be true at all. I've been able to tweak it to make it more how I like to play him and skip the other abilities I don't care about pretty easily.
So I think we know if you're a From Software fan, buy it.
Yeah, matter of fact, if you're From Software fan, why are you watching this?
Yeah, you're probably
you should
grinding
be playing
for
that
the
right
game
now,
right now
because you're not done.
Yeah, you're definitely not done.
Other
I saw
than-
PC Gamer said it took him 70 hours to finish it.
I believe it.
Holy crap!
It's a long time. I mean, I play hours of just and I just like playing it. So
No, I started doing it yesterday. I started just like using it as like a toy.
Yeah,
instead of worrying, because what happens is I worry about making progress, and it's just like soul crushing.
No, and the more you
so I was
do
like,
that,
you know what? I'm just gonna fiddle around with this toy basically.
Well,
and
here's
play
the
with
other
it.
here's the other thing that I do also is like when I did this with Bloodborne a lot too, where if I load it up again, if I haven't played it, I load it up, I come for the first time of the day or whatever, I will just play through the beginning part up until where I am, because
get kind of warmed up.
Get warmed up to sort of hit some things, get some extra money, get some extra.
timing right.
But the other thing that's valuable about that, and I did this with Dark Souls and Bloodborne a fair amount too, is it shows you how much better you are now.
Yeah.
Because if you're always just sort of pushing forward on that the edge of the horizon of the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, you always have that feeling of can I handle this? Will I handle this?
It's like
How
I said
do I
about
handle
the
this?
Division 2.
Right.
Exact same
But
thing.
if you go back and play all these, the sections you've already been through, and you just handle that shit, and just like I said, where I made a mistake in the one area, and 4 guys came at me, and I killed them all, and nobody touched me. And if that had happened the first time I got to that area, I'd have been dead 3 times over.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can go back and do that and kind of prove to yourself, I am better than I was when I played this part originally, and now I can handle it, and that gives me more confidence to sort of move forward into this unknown territory.
Right. The other thing I should mention, actually, that to me is one of the biggest deals and the biggest changes, and we do have to move on, we're running out of time, is that you cannot stumble into enemies that will just annihilate you.
Right, there's no levels.
Yeah, there's no levels. So you don't have to worry. If you watch the stream, when I first started playing, I'm like, well, I don't really want to go up this way
I know,
because I might run into somebody.
I was screaming in
who will
chat that there were no
annihilate me.
levels. I'm like, no, you're fine. There's no.
Yeah. But it's funny how
they'll annihilate you anyway because you don't know how to fight them. But there's
But it's
no
funny how that
inherent
fear
level.
is embedded in me from having played prior games.
Right.
That there's none of that in this game. So again, another way that I think it has kind of improved to make a challenging game a little more fair challenging instead of cheap challenging, at least in my opinion. But you, From Software fans, buy it.
Yeah.
No question. If you're someone
Unless
like me,
unless you hate or feel like you're not. I have a couple friends who are Dark Souls fans. One in particular bought it and is unhappy he bought it because his reflexes just aren't fast enough for this game.
Right.
He can't do
the
it.
timing.
He can't do it. Get the timing right. He can't do it properly. And he's like, if I could, I would refund it. But he bought it digitally on like the PlayStation Store, and you're stuck.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna keep at it. Like it's like you say, there is such a thing as being inherently good at this kind of game, which I think I more or less am. But I think if you, like you say, if you memorize the pattern long enough, you'll be able to get ahead of it to the point that you'll be able to do it. It's going to take you longer, but I think you can get there. But not everybody that's not everybody's idea of a good time, right?
Yeah, I mean that's when games start to cross the border between entertainment and work. I think.
Right.
And some people have a higher tolerance for that or lower. I have a low tolerance for that. Like I don't want to feel like I'm working when I play games, and I think that's one.
Even though
what?
You always are.
Oh, because it's my job to play. You know what I mean, though. You know what I mean. But so as someone who's not
no matter how much fun you're having, you're working.
It's still technically work. Yep. Which is a great life. I'm very lucky to have that in my life.
It's also a good thing to have in your back pocket with your wife.
Yep, that's true.
Working.
Good point. So from my perspective, if you're like me and you haven't been a fan, you've tried maybe most of the games or a couple of the games, I don't think that this one is going to change your mind that much. I think you appreciate some of the changes. I think some of the things that have really bugged you about From Software's other games are kind of alleviated in this. But at the end of the day, it's still a really tough game, and you're going to have really difficult battles to fight, and you're going to die a lot. And so if you're not a patient person, I still don't think that you're going to enjoy this game very much.
No, it definitely requires patience still.
Yeah.
But I think if you have an affinity for kind of the Devil May Cries or the Bayonettas of the world, this is going to be more up your alley.
It will have more appeal, absolutely. Or Onimusha even, something like that.
Yeah. And like I think you do need the Twitch skills more or less, but like if you're cool with that versus the more methodical Soulsborne approach. Like I really like. I think I might like this better than any of them except Bloodborne. I need to get further and kind of see
I've heard
the
a lot
whole
of
thing.
people say it's their favorite.
But
so
like,
I don't think you're on an island there.
I mean, Bloodborne is still kind of my favorite because I love the Lovecraft sort of Castlevania aesthetic of it.
I agree. Yeah.
Versus this, but there's a point where depending on how far this combat system goes and what you run into later in the game, it could surpass it.
There you go.
So we'll see. But like, I give it a giant thumbs up. It's great. It's great.
There you go. Straight from one of the biggest fans of those games. So
I'm not even like mid-range fan of those games, honestly.
Yeah, I guess I don't really know the the depth of the
5 fathom deep my fandom lies. It's not even. I'm absolute
casual at best.
Absolute filthy casual. Like no, not even
hilarious.
close.
All right, we got to move on. We're running out of time. The good news is this last topic, there's not a ton to talk about. Today, Sony had its first attempt at its ripoff of the Nintendo Direct. Let's just call it what it is.
The state of play.
I mean, it is a blatant ripoff of Nintendo Direct, which, with Sony not appearing at E3 this year...
Sony not appearing in this film.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
they're trying to warm up for their E3 Direct or whatever.
Or on the flip side, maybe it's like, hey, because they said they weren't going to have any E3 Direct.
Yeah.
So maybe the flip side is like, well, at least they didn't show up to E3 with this.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah, so...
there were people who thought this was going to be 2 hours long and, like, shadow drop Last of Us 2.
It's out there. In stores now.
Kaboom.
Nope, that was not the case.
You think this is a Sega Saturn?
Yeah. Sony's debut episode of what it's calling State of Play, and obviously Nintendo's are called Directs. It's basically Sony's Direct. It was underwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah. Although, apparently VR is not dead.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we learned from it is that Sony still cares about
Sony's still
PlayStation
pushing.
VR. And I think that may be what these are. They're going to be an outlet for Sony to push some of its smaller projects, I don't know. I wouldn't call PSVR, I guess, a small initiative.
It was a sort of a Nindies.
Yeah,
thing
it was.
It was
very much like it.
It was a Cindy's.
Yeah.
No.
It kicked things off with Iron Man VR, which I actually missed. I didn't get to see. So what
I saw bits of it because it was the YouTube stream was crashing every 5 seconds. So finally I reloaded it, but I saw most of it. It was it starts like all in first person in like a plane, and you're kind of like not sure what it is, but at a certain point, I realized what it was because this certain way Tony was talking to the stewardess was basically, oh, that's Tony Stark. I get it. And then the plane gets blown off. The side of the plane gets blown up, and he goes flying out. Oh, the steward. It wasn't a steward. It was Friday. It was his digital assistant that replaced Jarvis in the suit AI. And the whole thing blows up, and he goes flying out of the plane, and he goes like, "Time to suit up," and the suit comes on him, and then the game. The whole time it shows like not actual gameplay in text on the bottom of the screen.
So it was like CG stuff.
So it was CG, but it was like clearly like a proof of concept thing. And then like the gameplay stuff they showed was like first person with the readout, the Iron Man readout thing, and the hand would come up and shoot stuff or shoot a missile or whatever. And so clearly you're gonna be like motion control using.
You are Iron Man with motion control.
Pretty much, yeah. That kind of. You're flying around and shooting stuff and doing that kind of thing.
Sorry we don't have B-roll for all this stuff, but literally, I left just as the thing was...
Yeah, it takes too much time to process that in the TriCaster and still be on at 5.
Yeah, it just wasn't going to work for us. So I'm sorry there's no B-roll for this stuff. Then they moved on to Crash Team Racing.
Which we know.
It's a known quantity. I do think that might end up being a really big game for Sony, though.
I just have a big seller,
no
question.
I mean, right now it kind of needs it. It's kind of in a dead zone for first-party sales. This could be Sony's Mario Kart. I mean, as you all know, Mario Kart is one of Nintendo's best-selling games on every platform.
Is this multi-platform, though?
No,
It's just Sony?
Yeah, I think it's just... Or actually, is it? That's a good question. I don't know.
I mean, the first Crash collection was multi-platform.
Right. Well, the Crash Bandicoot collection, not
Yeah.
Crash Team Racing, though. I don't know.
It's still Crash Bandicoot. It's still the same license.
It's the IP. I don't know. Someone in chat probably
it's
knows.
multi-platform, all the consoles.
Not
according
PC,
to Vincent.
but the consoles. Okay, well, there you go. Still probably will sell far better on PS4 than it will on other platforms.
Well, I don't know. Don't count the Switch out on this kind of thing.
Well, you already have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yeah, but people have been playing it for 2 years. Time
Not
for
people
something
with,
new.
well, I guess, yeah, even Switch, you've been playing it for 2 years at this point.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Switch is 2 years old.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. But this is pretty much a known quantity because it's a remake of a game that we've already played.
Much like Mario Kart 8.
Yeah, exactly. Next up was No Man's Sky Beyond for PlayStation VR. You're going to be able to play No Man's Sky in VR.
Part of the second thing of the Beyond update.
Yeah. Will you play it in VR?
Yeah, I'll try it.
Yeah?
First one was, the first thing is some online thing. They haven't been specific about it because they already have online. But,
Do you need to get your door?
no. I mean, I can look at the camera, but, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm wired to the thing. So the second one's VR, and there's a third thing that we don't know what that is yet. Yeah, somebody delivered something.
Free update.
So, yeah, of course it's free. They're all free.
Yeah, it's awesome, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you're basically getting a brand new PlayStation VR game that's probably the best PlayStation VR game for free.
Yeah. I mean,
If you've already bought it.
I wonder how long I'm going to be able to do that, but
Oh, I'd last like 5 minutes. I'd barf. No doubt about it.
yeah, people have been asking for that since before it even came out. I mean, that's sort of like a natural fit, so.
Yep. And then from there, it just kind of spirals down into the bowels of the indie scene. Ready, Set, Heroes, Blood and Truth, which is probably PlayStation VR's biggest upcoming game. So
that's kind of their flagship thing.
Yeah, it's like their next big thing for PSVR. Then Observation, Five Nights at Freddy's VR.
Wahoo.
I know we don't care about that, but it might end up being the best-selling PlayStation VR game ever.
Maybe. The Five Nights thing is kind of, the fad is sort of over.
I was never even started for me, but are the kids over it now?
Oh, the kids are
Meaning
18
the people
now.
who watch Let's Play stuff.
They're all in college now. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's been like 5 of them, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a greatest hits, but also some new stuff thing. It's like there's VR versions of a lot of the classic levels, but there's also some new content. So I don't know, it could be. I mean, I don't feel like it's a goggle seller, but it might be something worth looking at.
I think it'll sell well.
If you already got one.
It's what I mean. It has a name at least. A lot of the games on PlayStation VR don't. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
A lot of them are just indie games or new IPs. And then there was Concrete Genie for PlayStation VR. That game looks pretty sweet.
It's PlayStation VR compatible, but I don't think it's necessarily like a focus.
And you can't play the whole game in VR?
I think you can, but I don't I don't think I will.
That's what they announced today, though.
Yeah, it is VR compatible.
You can play the whole thing
but,
in VR.
I was just wondering where that game went.
That game looks pretty cool.
Speaking of which, Golem.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that game?
I really thought we would see something on that game today. And I had heard rumblings a couple weeks ago that it was like resurfacing, but...
Yeah, I don't know what... That was supposed to be a launch title.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to say
something happened.
Something happened, definitely. Then they showed a new trailer for Days Gone.
Yeah, pretty good trailer.
Yeah.
It's like, at least almost got me interested in the story.
It showed off how you could use the Freakers. I think that they are called Freakers.
Yeah, they are called Freakers.
How you could use the Freakers to take over camps, which was
Yeah.
pretty cool. Like, you could goad them into the camps and then just run away and just let them come in and just...
I don't see the hook on this thing for some reason. I'm still going to play it, but like...
Well, the original hook was, oh my god, so many zombies.
Right, and now we've kind of crossed that bridge a few times
Yeah.
already. I mean, I'm still going to play it. I like open world, like post-apocalyptic guns and stuff. I mean, it's cool. I wouldn't be surprised if this game underperformed.
Oh, you're definitely going to play it because it's one of two big games next
Right,
month.
it's basically this and the next game.
Yeah, this and Mortal Kombat, and that's it. Yeah, and Mortal Kombat 11 had a new trailer. Jax, Kung Lao, and there was a third character, I think. Liu Kang, yep. Were shown off for the first time in MK11.
They're really highlighting the time travel aspect where the younger and older versions of the characters are confronting each other.
Yes, Jax, that was interesting.
And endlessly fighting each other.
Yeah.
Nobody likes their younger selves, it turns out.
There was some Jax on Jax loving going on in that trailer.
And I'd just like to point out that this is the best Johnny Cage has ever been.
Yeah.
The fatality they showed before is amazing. And then like the thing where like
I always hated Johnny Cage.
I was not a fan of Johnny Cage, but I'm a fan of this Johnny Cage.
Yeah, they've done a good job changing
And I love
him.
that like they referenced the glitch with the head punch in the first game with the retakes and the fatality, and then the younger one is just like, I do my own stunts. How about you? And he goes, I got people for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That was it.
Oh, and young Johnny Cage is ultra 90s, which is great.
Yep.
Like I'm more and more. The more I see of this game, the more excited I am for it, just because it looks like they're really going to have some fun with it.
Yeah, and it's only a month away.
Yeah, and because I remember you asked when they first announced, like, where else is there to go with the lore for this game? And the answer is crazy.
Yeah,
that's where we go next. We go crazy with the lore. I love like the younger Liu Kang and Kung Lao being like, our futures suck.
Yeah.
Like we become zombie monsters. Like, yeah, it does. You guys got screwed by the lore, dude.
That's funny. And that's it. That's pretty much State of Play Episode 1.
Yep.
How would you rate that for a debut episode?
It's like a C-.
Yeah, I'd say this. The production was good.
Production was
It
good.
was well cut. And
Mortal Kombat was cool. It was nice, even if I'm not super excited about most of the games, it's nice to see that PlayStation VR is still alive and kicking.
Yeah.
With real games, for the most part.
Yeah.
There was another game in one of the. I don't think you had it written down. There's another game.
Yeah, these were just the highlights.
There's another game they showed. It like was sort of like their montage of other games, and it looked like sort of a generic indie thing. But when it like kind of showed a little bit of gameplay, it was clearly like a cute hack and slash inspiration from Astrobot. Like clearly like the idea of doing like a more standard game, but from the point of view of a VR observer.
Oh, interesting.
Seems to be catching on.
That's good for me.
So I think that's
That's exactly what I need.
There were a couple things like that. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so Astrobot is clearly going to make have some
ripples.
Yeah, for sure. Which is good because A, it works, and B, not everything has to be a first-person simulator thing. Like, it's like, I'm into the fact that like you need to ooh.
What?
Well, some flash of light there.
Did
Everything went dark for a second.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. No wonder you have trouble parrying. The fact that like any indication that VR developers are branching out into more diverse ways of presenting things is a positive thing to me because they need to explore what frankly this new medium can do in terms of like presenting content.
I think a lot of people are starting to glaze over at the first person stuff too.
Yeah.
Like when we curated the Boneyard stuff or whatever it was called, I can't remember the name of it now.
Bone.
I think I was talking about it earlier.
I keep wanting to say Bone Storm because that's the game that Bart Simpson like
Boneworks.
desperately wanted to play and like got in trouble for.
Boneworks.
Someone should make Bone Storm now. It's about time someone made Bone Storm.
We wrote a glowing blurb for that like saying, you guys need to watch this. This is like the next level of VR. Nobody watched it. And you can see, it's another first-person VR game. You're like, after a while, after you've seen like 200 of them, it's very easy to kind of glaze over and not really pay attention to it anymore. And so, yeah, I think some of those experiences...
That was kind of my reaction to Iron Man, too. It was like, oh, another first-person sort of VR toy. Basically, it's like, okay.
Yep. But that was it. So I would agree with you, about a C. The production was good. It was really short. It was like 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was like 20 minutes long.
Which is weird. I kind of thought it was going to be... I didn't think it was going to be 2 hours, but I thought it would at least be 30 minutes. But it does say a lot about why Sony maybe not... Or was not, but maybe why they decided
clearly
not
ready to talk about any of the big hitters.
Yeah.
So
a little disappointing. So there you go. It's time for our trailer of the week, and it is GDC week, or it was GDC week. And every GDC week on GameFace, we like to focus on one of the tech demos that was shown at GDC. Now, usually GDC tech demos kind of show what's coming next, but I think since we're kind of on the cusp of what the next consoles being announced. They kind of focused this year on tech demos on either this is what we can produce now in real time if you have a crazy powerful rig, or here is something you'll never be able to produce in real time. So they did like a photorealism one, and then they did this one, which is the Unreal Engine Troll demo. Let's roll it. All right, so we're already over 3 hours. So we have no time to talk about the trailer of the week. We just need to get to your questions. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to answer a ton of them tonight because we gave you 3 hours of show today.
we gave you a whole Avengers Endgame runtime.
We did. Vincent has a note. Apple Arcade games are only mobile exclusive. Beyond a Steel Sky is going to be on PC and consoles too.
Oh, problem solved.
Yeah. Let's see. From Justin Horman.
That's why it looks like a real game.
Yeah, exactly. Because it is. Has an upcoming game that's a sequel ever push you to play an earlier game in the series that you hadn't played before? A Vampire the Masquerade 2 has me playing Bloodlines now, and I want to try Dying Light pretty much solely because of Chris Avalone's involvement in Dying Light 2.
Well, first off,
Majora Tom, thank you for your subscription.
Dying Light is a commitment. I mean, that's a long game.
It is a long game.
It's good. It's weirdly like untalked about, but I thought it was way better than I expected it to be. I mean, to be honest, I play almost everything that comes out if I can. So there's not a lot of stuff I need to go back and play that I didn't play before. There's probably something if I thought hard enough.
I think with our jobs that we do, it's like you don't have time to wait to play the sequel for the first game in the frame. You have to play the first one.
I do go back and like replay or sometimes like the first one.
Like if you play the sequel, it'll inspire you to go back and play the first.
Yeah, or if sequel's coming out, I'll go play the original, just sort of like, so if I haven't played in a long time, just so I'm like really clear on. I did that with Darksiders 3. I went back and played a little bit of Darksiders 1 and 2 just to remind myself of how those worked. So like when I played 3, I'd be able to have a direct comparison, which it turned out was either pretty good or pointless because Darksiders 3 is so different. Although they did change that. They did add a patch where you can switch to a classic mode where it plays more like Darksiders 1.
Oh, interesting.
Like it's less Dark Soulsy. I think probably the most recent thing, something like that was, it wasn't recent, but I remember when Baldur's Gate 2 came out, I had not played Baldur's Gate 1, so I went back and played that, and then I played Baldur's Gate 2. So yeah, that was like 20 years ago, but like it's still, I still did it. That's the last thing I can remember.
I honestly can't think of a single game. I always play them when they come out, or at least I have been for the last 23, 24 years or so at least. So yeah, I always end up playing the first one. Again, thanks to Majora Tom for subscribing via Twitch Prime, man. Appreciate it. From JReedVic7, with backwards compatibility going forward, this is a good question, actually, and streaming coming, what's the future for licensing with music rights and sports leagues, with games existing and being for sale in perpetuity? Does the nature of these deals change with content no longer being recycled? That's a good question. If you're signing a deal with something for Stadia, you really are signing it in perpetuity.
In theory, yeah.
I mean, infinity. Those contracts are going to be tough to ink, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that is an interesting... Yeah, the sports game thing, I hadn't actually thought of that, where like the idea that like, you wouldn't be able to go back to last year's Madden.
There's no reason to, though, because the game's always alive. So it's always updating, you'd assume. It's always updating the players.
Right, but what I mean is like there's people who prefer like the mechanics of this year's NHL or this year's Madden, and you can't go back to that. Although the idea would probably be that they would not evolve the mechanics that hard.
Or I wonder if they do create like these legacy versions where at a certain point they freeze the game and then leave that as one version of the game and then continue on. Like, who knows? Like, it opens up the door for a lot of stuff.
Like, my question on that ends up being like, well, where's the financial incentive for them to do that if someone's not buying those games individually?
Right.
Now you're just running 2 instances of it for what? Run the current instance only, so they have to buy the microtransactions for that.
Yeah.
Like it's you get into that's the thing about the Stadia thing, the model that they're proposing. I think it makes all the decisions way more business oriented than creative oriented, and we're already in a place where business oriented decisions dominate creative oriented decisions already, and this is just pushing you further towards that. I'm not a fan of the streaming thing as a few. I
think we figured that one out.
I don't know if you picked that up over the course of this episode, but
you can read between the lines. Headingham J, are you at all concerned about that game company's newest Apple exclusive game Sky not being shown with Apple's game subscription service? It's been 7 years since Journey. Yes. What the hell?
Didn't even think of that.
What the hell is that studio doing?
I don't know. Guys, has it been that long since they made a game?
Yeah. Think about it. And Journey lasted, 90 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about that studio. I mean, just the fact that it decided to do like an iOS exclusive game, that's just weird to me.
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
I would never have thought of that until you mentioned that.
Something's going on over there.
Something's up.
Yep, something's
way up.
All right, we'll answer one more before we gotta go. I'm sorry, there's a ton of questions in here, guys, but we're already well over 3 hours for this episode. I can never read the light green names on white. I can never read the light green games on the white background, like that name right there.
It's Threadzilla.
It's always hard for me to read. What would an ideal state of play look like for you? Maybe some people are upset that we didn't enjoy it. Same format, bigger announcements. What would shoot the hype levels off the charts for you? It's very simple. It's games that we actually care about.
Yeah, I mean...
Not that we don't care about Crash Team Racing or Mortal Kombat, but those are known quantities.
I just don't think... I didn't expect anything more from it, really. It's just kind of an update. I mean, State of Play is a decent title for it, because it's just sort of an update on how things are. It's like, yeah, I know. Everything's there. VR is not dead. Days Gone's coming out next month. Mortal Kombat's coming out next month. Cool. But if you want
to... Focus on first party. That's what I think it needs more of.
But if you want to blow my mind out the back of the theater, like you're gonna have to do something like, drop the Shenmue 3 Kickstarter,
right? Or a new chunk of gameplay for The Last of Us Part 2 or whatever. Like they could have done a ton of stuff. I don't think that these shows should be competing with Jeff Keighley. Like they shouldn't be like out there trying. I mean, basically, you look at it. That MK trailer that closed it. Like back in the game trailers days when we got exclusives, I would have been fighting for that exclusive with Sony. That's weird. Like, they shouldn't be in the game of competing with Jeff Keighley to get like the hottest new trailer or whatever. Like they should use the resources that they have, which is their games that they're creating that only they have access to. And that's what they should be focusing on. Nintendo's been very good about making sure the crux of almost every direct is first-party stuff, and then the third-party stuff is kind of sprinkled in here or there, if at all. Yeah, this Sony thing was like, hey, it was the opposite. It was all third-party stuff, and here's a sprinkling of our stuff.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be how Sony rolls, though. I mean, especially if they're not going to go to E3, it's like this is partly a bone thrown to the various games that are not going to benefit from their presence at E3.
Yeah.
You know, that seemed to me, maybe not this early is that specific thing, but if they do another one closer to E3 or later in the summer, I think that's definitely in play. I don't know. I kind of expect them to be sort of in a holding pattern right now because they're not going to E3. They're not showing off their big games right now. We don't even know when any of them are coming out. I don't think we're going to know for another 6 months or so. You know, I don't understand what Sony's doing or why they're doing it or where they are right now, really. But like, I don't expect really anything from them. I'm surprised we even got this much, frankly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Like, you want to shoot my hype through the roof? Give me a frickin' release date for Ghost of Tsushima. The
Sekiro for everyone.
The everyman's Sekiro.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll say this: I'm more looking forward to that now after I played Sekiro. So. Okay, that's it. We got to wrap it up. It's been 3 hours. This is a record. This is our longest episode of GameFace ever. So
didn't we go like 3:45 once?
No,
Yeah.
Another minute.
Stretch it another minute. Well, I still have to close it out, and I'm pretty long-winded. Joaquin Dragoon, thank you, man, for the bits. Appreciate it a ton. Thanks to anybody who subscribed via Twitch Prime during the show while we were not paying attention to chat. Thank you very much. A couple of you guys did wait to the end. Thanks very much. If you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to this show on iTunes, that's right. Our show is on iTunes, folks. I know people on YouTube may not realize this. Our show is on iTunes. So if you don't want to wait for the video version, usually the audio version on iTunes comes up about a day before it ends up on YouTube. But anyway, if you were listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube or listening on iTunes, thank you very much, first of all. But also, if you could help us out by subscribing via Twitch Prime, it'll give us a free $2.50 every month, and you got to do it every month. It's a pain in the butt, but we would really appreciate it. Instructions are in the description. So anyway, it's weird. It's Monday night for us to be doing game. I don't know if we've ever done a Monday night episode.
Remember.
I don't think we have.
I don't know.
I think it's the first
We've
time.
done 161 of them.
I know, but that's the crazy
every
part.
one.
But I don't think we've ever done a Monday. But anyway, I know Mondays.
I think we recorded like a freestyle
episode on a Monday. I think
but it
you're
didn't
right.
go up
until
Monday.
Exactly. So hey, it's Monday. I know Mondays suck for everybody. Everyone's going back to work after the weekend. So thanks for spending some time with us. I know you probably just want to kick your feet up and pass out on the couch. So thanks for taking the time. Thanks for hanging on the stream. GameFace is up and out.